Chapter 384. Leaving the cave of the Ape King, Jianshan declined to respond to the Ape King's warning, and instead replied with a smile. I know. The Ape King stared deeply at Jianshan with a serious gaze before saying, any family with a ruler armament is a family with power. A person traveling alone with the heavenly tiger god will surely come across many unforeseen events. Senior Ape King, there is a reason why we have the expression, counter soldiers with arms and water with an earth weir. The situation has already come, but there is no use mentioning that now. Although the family in question is very strong, the Tianyuan continent is massive, so they will not be able to find me easily. Jianshan spoke without fear. I indeed hope that way. I only wish for the child of Rum Guinness to stay safe from any wrongful harm. The Ape King sighed before taking out a bottle. With a pained face, he gave it to Jianshan. For the child of Rum Guinness, I will part myself from one of my treasures. This bottle of 100 grass wine is for you. I hope that you will be able to improve yourself. This way, you will be able to properly protect the heavenly tiger god. Many thanks, Senior Ape King. Jianshan cried out in joy before quickly putting the bottle into his space ring as if afraid that the Ape King would change his mind. Senior Ape King, then this ruler armament will be given to you in exchange for the 100 grass wine. Taking the bottle, Jianshan pushed the seal of Treasure Mountain toward the Ape King. The Ape King cast an eye at the item for a moment before speaking. The ruler armaments of you humans serve no use for me. Take it with you. If you come across a method to use it, then the ruler armament will be of use to you. Hearing that, Jianshan hesitated for a moment before taking the seal of Treasure Mountain back. The growth of a heavenly tiger god is excruciatingly slow. They must consume a large amount of heavenly resources in order to grow. Since I have spent many years collecting every type of said resource, and Rum Guinness is my dear friend, I shall bequeath them to her child for the sake of growing faster. Waving his hand, several heavenly resources began to fill the table. 1,000-year ginseng, spirit mushrooms, knotweed, dragon's tongue grass, core plant, 100-year-old spirit root, and so on. All sorts of ingredients that Jianshan had never seen before appeared on the table. These items were all being given to the tiger cub, so Jianshan did not decline any of them. With a word of thanks, Jianshan began to collect the heavenly resources. The Ape King spoke once more. Stay for a while. I will be feeding the resources to the heavenly tiger god in the meantime. The child is in a sleep to digest them right now. We shall see if there are any changes later. When the child wakes, you may take him and leave. After that, the Ape King ignored Jianshan and sat back on his bed. Closing his eyes, he descended into a calm meditative sleep. The belly of the cave had become deathly quiet. In his boredom, Jianshan walked around the cave, observing the strange plants being cultivated. After waiting for 6 hours, the tiger cub finally awoke. Both of its bright eyes began to flicker open, and immediately took notice of Jianshan, who was standing not too far away. Upon seeing Jianshan, the white tiger cub was stunned. Afterward, it began to cry out happily before leaping from the bed toward Jianshan. Hearing the tiger cub's cry, Jianshan's face lit up in happiness, before turning around just in time to see a white streak of light shooting toward his chest. Catching the cub in both hands, the tiger cub knocked against Jianshan's torso with enough force that Jianshan had to take several steps back. MRRR. The white tiger cub was exceedingly happy, and continued to purr into Jianshan's chest as it rubbed its head against Jianshan's chin. Its tongue licked at Jianshan without stop in a clear indication of its joy. After the events of the past few days, the white tiger had begun to dote upon Jianshan a lot more. Jianshan smiled as he looked at the tiger cub. He could clearly tell that the tiger cub had grown heavier, and even bigger since the last time he saw it. All 4 of the paws of the cub had already grown to be incredibly sharp, and even its fangs were terrifying to look at. Jianshan, take the heavenly tiger god and leave this place. The child cannot stay here for too long. The Ape King's voice could be heard. Opening his eyes, he smiled in the direction of the white tiger with an affectionate expression. Yes, Senior Ape King. This one will be leaving then, farewell. Jianshan spoke to the Ape King before leading the tiger cub away. MRRR. The white tiger cub seemed to have realized that they were leaving and swung both of its reluctant eyes, toward the Ape King before waving a paw at him in farewell. Leaving the cave, the outside world was already quite dark with the bright moon shining down on the ground below. The night was extraordinarily beautiful with moonlight shining everywhere. Even an unruly child would be stunned by the beauty and would be fascinated by the shine. The Ape King had given no farewell. Jianchun carried the tiger cub on his chest and began to fly into the sky. Leaving the mountain peak, he came across the barrier and slipped past it without a sound. After leaving the barrier, Jianchun refused to stick around any longer and flew toward Longevity Valley. The tiger cub was extremely curious on how they were flying and clutched at Jianchun's arms tightly. Its eyes shined brightly with pure curiosity as it twisted and turned its head around. Staying snugly within Jianchun's arms, it continued to enjoy the view with an adorable expression on its face. By the time Jianchun returned to Longevity Valley, it was already nearly daytime. By then, the village was already bustling about. Jianchun didn't return to the village just yet, and instead descended within the valley and walked the rest of the way with the tiger cub by his side. "Hey Jianchun, you're finally back. Did you bring me anything good to eat?" Little Fatty walked to meet him from some distance away. The moment he saw the tiger by Jianchun's side, he cried out with an astonished look, "Jianchun, where did you find this magical beast? It has wings, so does that mean it'll be able to fly when it grows up?" Jianchun nodded his head. "This magical beast was found by me in the forest. What do you think? Is it cute?" Jianchun remembered the Ape King's words and said nothing to divulge the tiger cub's identity. Jianchun and Little Fatty continued to laugh and banter with each other as they returned to the village. On the way, several villagers called out to Jianchun in greeting. Jianchun's ability to fly was already known by everyone. He was able to become a Heaven Saint Master at such a young age, and thus had earned the respect of the entire village. When Jianchun returned to the house, Elder Xiao and Xiaomi both came in with their hose perched on their shoulders at the same time. "Ah, Jianchun, what's that you brought with you?" Xiaomi glanced at the white tiger cub with a strange look. Laughing, Jianchun spoke. "Uncle Xiaomi, this is a magical beast I found while I was outside the valley." "Little beast? What little beast? This place has a hierarchy of grade. Is this a low-leveled magical beast?" Xiaomi spoke with curiosity. Upon hearing low-level magical beast, the tiger cub seemed as if it was displeased. Holding its head up high from Jianchun's embrace, the tiger cub revealed the sharp fangs it had as it gave off a king-like aura toward Xiaomi. The reaction of the tiger cub caused Xiaomi to look surprised. Sizing up the cub, he looked at the wings on its back with a startled look before turning back to his father. "Father, you are the knowledgeable one here. Have you ever seen such a magical beast? This one doesn't seem to be a low-level beast." Elder Xiao remained silent as he stared deeply at the tiger cub. In the end, when he looked at the wings on the tiger's back, his eyebrows furrowed together as he revealed a ponderous expression. Jianchun had a faint smile on his face as he looked at Elder Xiao. He wasn't worried if the identity of the tiger cub was known to Elder Xiao, since only a Class 7 magical beast would know of the true identity that ran through the cub's veins. No humans would know of the true identity, since a heavenly tiger god was not seen since the ancient past. Even if Jianchun mentioned its name, very few people would know about it. That was because it had been far too long. The last time it had been seen was during the time of Emotianyan. Seeing how Elder Xiao had been silent for a long time, Xiaomi asked once more with shock, "Father, could it be that even you don't know the tiger's history?" Ignoring Xiaomi, the elder continued to look at the tiger's wings with narrowed eyes. In that moment, his body began to shake as if he had suddenly thought about something unbelievable and was overwhelmed with shock because of it. Seeing the elder's reaction, Jianchun's heart skipped a beat. Don't tell me he figured it out. Chapter 385. Pressure. Elder Xiao had a shocked expression as his eyes stared at the tiger in Jianchun's hands. A look of utter disbelief could be seen. "Father, what's wrong?" Xiaomi was speechless at the sudden change in the elder's expression. This was the very first time he had ever seen his father in such a state. Elder Xiao continued to ignore Xiaomi as his eyes became more and more frosty. Carefully analyzing the tiger cub in Jianchun's hands even more, His eyes seemed as if they could clearly see every single detail on the tiger. MRR. With the elder's stare being a tad bit frightening and the cub still quite young, it had begun to feel intimidated by the elder. The cub's petite body tried to burrow deeper into Jianshen's arms, as if trying to hide from the elder like it was scared. Elder Xiao, what are you doing? Jianshen was beginning to grow nervous. He didn't know just what to think from the elder's actions. Had he really seen through the tiger's identity? The Ape King had told him before that a human shouldn't know of the true identity of a heavenly tiger god. Elder Xiao let out a long breath of air, as the cold glint in his eyes began to recede. In a flash he had reverted back to his original expression with just a small complicated look as he turned to Jianshen. Jianshen, talk to me honestly. This magical beast you found, was it really found in the forest? Elder Xiao, could it be you know of this tiger's background? Jianshen stared at the elder with an astonished look. The elder sighed once more before looking to Little Fatty. Little Fatty, go and plow the fields. Yes, grandfather. Fatty replied before giving both Jianshen and the white tiger a curious look. But in the end, he went out to the fields to do as his grandfather asked. After Little Fatty had left, Elder Xiao looked at Jianshen and Xiaomi. You two follow me. Turning about, the elder walked into one of the rooms of the house. Xiaomi could feel that the situation had grown serious, and cast a deep glance toward the tiger cub, before following his father into one of the rooms nervously. Jianshen stroked the head of the cub gently before following after the elder. This was the personal room of Elder Xiao. It was only 10 square meters, and the furniture was arranged in a simplistic manner. There was only a bed and wardrobe in the room, and a small pile of objects in a corner. Aside from this, there was nothing else. The moment Jianshen entered the room, a faint but transparent barrier enshrouded the entire room. Upon seeing the sudden activation of the barrier, Xiaomi had a startled look. Father, what is the meaning of this? What has made you so cautious to create a barrier? Jianshen's face grew deathly serious as well as he stepped forward. No matter if he could believe it or not, one thing was certain. Elder Xiao had definitely figured out the matter behind the heavenly tiger god. Elder Xiao ignored Xiaomi once more and stared deeply at Jianshen. Jianshen, speak the truth. Where did you come across this cub? Elder Xiao, do you know of the tiger cub's identity? Jianshen listened carefully for confirmation. Elder Xiao's eyes latched onto the tiger cub and spoke. If my guess is not wrong, then this cub is the heavenly tiger god that has appeared several times in the ancient past. Jianshen was startled at the elder's confirmation. Although he had guessed that the elder knew, hearing the elder personally confirm it still caused his heart to start beating irregularly. Jianshen, it seems that you are aware of what a heavenly tiger god is. The elder looked at Jianshen with a solemn gaze. That is correct, I know of the heavenly tiger god. It was only now that Jianshen decided not to hide it. He then began to regale his tale of rum Guinness and what he was entrusted with. After listening to Jianshen's story, the elder had descended into a quiet calm that was filled with thought. Jianshen didn't make a sound in fear of breaking the elder's train of thought. Xiaomi continued to stand some distance away in complete shock at Jianshen and the tiger cub he was carrying. He couldn't believe that the cub would unexpectedly have a mysterious background that was far beyond what he could even imagine. After a while, the elder finally sighed. The appearance of a heavenly tiger god is something that should come as a blessing to the magical beast clans. If they are able to exploit this blessing, then they would be able to lay claim to a heavenly tiger god of the past. In that case, the magical beast clans would have a monstrous amount of power against the human world. Jianshen, this heavenly tiger god you have may very well bring catastrophe to our human world. Hearing this, Jianshen turned pale with fright from what the elder said. Could he possibly want to eliminate the tiger cub here, and now in order to avoid any future trouble? That should be unlikely, Elder Xiao. This tiger cub is very obedient. And with the current circumstances, I'm afraid that it'll remain within the human world for now. With time the cub will become partial to the human world and wouldn't be used against us. Furthermore, the cub's father was killed by the king of the Gilligan clan, while the mother was seriously injured. When the cub matures, it will want to take revenge on the clan and not against humans. Jianshan tried to explain in a hurry. If the elder wanted to kill the cub, then Jianshan would have no chance of protecting it. The elder nodded his head with a thoughtful look. Anne, your words have merit to them. Even if the heavenly tiger god will not prove to be a danger to humanity, it would still be a disaster if it were to travel by your side. Elder Xiao didn't let Jianshan speak another word, and continued to speak. This situation isn't as simple as you may think. The king of the Gilligan clan wouldn't try to kill the heavenly tiger god for no reason. That is because a heavenly tiger god is no small amount of power. With one, their fighting strength would soar to an unbelievable degree. Elder Xiao's words left Jianshan at a loss on what to do. Sighing, the elder spoke. Jianshan, the heavenly tiger god's life could be in danger at any moment. You must rear it as quickly as possible. It is only when its strength reaches a sufficient degree that danger might be mitigated. Elder Xiao, could there be some other secret in this matter? Jianshan asked. The elder didn't respond to Jianshan's question and merely replied, Jianshan, you should go. Remember, raise the heavenly tiger god as soon as possible. Finally, there was a single crack in the normally impassive tone. Jianshan looked at the elder with a curious eye for some time. Finally sighing, Jianshan took the cub and left the room with doubt still in his eyes. For Elder Xiao to want me to raise the tiger cub as fast as possible, it seems that there is still something I don't know. Did Rum Guinness not tell me? Or is this something even she doesn't know about? After Jianshan left, Elder Xiao took out a blood-red token and handed it to Xiaomi. Xiaomi, take this spirit token and go straight to the Bloodsword sect. Tell the entire intelligence organization to mobilize everyone. Watch closely for anything that happens. And if there is any extremely strong experts that appear within the Tianyuan continent, report to me straight away. Father, didn't you say that you would never use the Bloodsword sect? Why are you? Xiaomi asked with a startled look. The situation has become far too grave. Don't ask any questions, and take my token to the Bloodsword sect straight away. Elder Xiao interjected solemnly. His expression was dark, and no longer looked like a simple farmer. Right now, he looked more like the valiant hero giving command to his entire army. Yes, your child will go now. Xiaomi didn't speak anymore, and flew away with the token. After Xiaomi had left, the elder sighed before walking to his bed. They are growing far too bold if they would dare to kill even a heavenly tiger god. When the time comes, and the heavenly tiger cub fully matures, their judgment will come. But they will try and infiltrate the human world, in order to assassinate it soon enough. Forget it. It has nothing to do with me. If they truly come, then some other family will come to protect it. After leaving the elder's room, Jianshan took the cub to his own room to rest. Then placing the cub on his bed, he began to caress the cub's ears and head. Mr. RRR. Closing its eyes in comfortable bliss, the tiger cub was fully content with being treated to Jianshan's care. Right now in its heart, it was very partial to Jianshan. Looking at the obedient tiger cub, Jianshan took out several of the 1,000-year ginseng from within his space ring. Little white tiger, take this and eat it, this way, you'll grow up faster. The little tiger sniffed at the item offered to him curiously. Upon sniffing the sweet fragrance, its eyes widened before purring happily, and taking the items into its mouth, relishing the meal. After eating several stalks of the 1,000-year ginseng, the tiger cub had finally finished eating. Closing its eyes once more, it began to sleep on top of the bed. Jianshan knew that the cub was currently in the process of absorbing the spiritual qi in from its meal. Not wanting to bother the tiger, Jianshan climbed onto the bed himself, and began to drink the 100-grass wine given to him by the Ape King. The 1,000-year-old 100-grass wine had a great effect in helping a person's mind. After Jianshan had finished off some of it, he closed his eyes in pure bliss, as his soul enjoyed the pleasurable feeling. Feeling an azure light soar up from his dantian into his mind, Jianshan felt his mind suddenly explode with excitement. Even the sword spirits were feeling the benefits. With Jianshan's mind soaring in strength, his omnipresence ability was also increasing by leaps and bounds. Right now, with his soul undergoing improvement, Jianshan felt as if he was being baptized and transcending to becoming an immortal. Chapter 386. Recovery of the Sword Spirits. A moment later, Jianchen awoke from the comfortable state he was in only to feel himself many times stronger than before. Without delay, Jianchen grabbed the bottle and began to chug it. This time, Jianchen swallowed a large amount of the wine, finishing off a good amount of it quickly. Soon after the last drop had been swallowed, he began to relish in the comfortable feeling once more. 2 hours later, Jianchen had finally absorbed the rest of the wine. At this moment, Jianchen's ability with his thoughts had increased by another third. His omnipresence now allowed him to spread his senses to at least 13 kilometers. Jianchen was incomparably happy. Jianchen would have never believed that such a feat could be accomplished in such a short amount of time with his strength boosted, and even his body had been affected. This 100-grass wine is truly a blessed item. Jianchen sighed in admiration before drinking even more of the bottle. In a flash, the wine bottle given to him by the Ape King only had a small portion left. Carefully sampling it, Jianchen closed his eyes and began to allow his mind to strengthen. The vital energy within the 100-grass wine continued to swirl around Jianchen's dantian before quickly dissipating. The azure qi from the wine quickly soared up into Jianchen's head before entering Jianchen's consciousness. Within his consciousness, the sword spirits that were revolving around the multicolored stone pulsated with happiness as the light coming from them began to flicker. When the azure qi ascended into Jianchen's consciousness, the spirit that Jianchen shared with the sword spirits benefited greatly. The weakened soul of the sword spirits began to grow stronger with the light around them growing richer in concentration. After an unknown amount of time, the 100-grass wine had been completely absorbed by Jianchen, and his spirit felt complete bliss radiating through it. Suddenly, Jianchen felt a tremendous change that he had never felt before. Without even spreading his presence, he was able to detect the wind blowing on the grass 100 meters away. At this moment, Jianchen realized that his spirit had harmonized with the world. Without even needing to plan carefully, he had already entered a state of harmony with the world. He was able to clearly sense everything within 100 meters, almost like he could control everything. It was as if this area was his domain. Spreading out his omnipresence, Jianchen's senses had instantly covered the valley. All of the villagers currently working out in the fields could be seen like a painting within Jianchen's mind. Despite the actual distance between them, Jianchen could see their every movements down to the finest detail. All of the villagers had been taught how to cultivate by Xiaomi, so they had all been able to cultivate to a certain degree. Although the strongest ones weren't even a great saint master, the good majority of them were saints or just great saints. Some didn't care at all about cultivating, and thus hadn't even condensed their saint force to form a saint weapon yet. Following that, Jianchen spread his presence out to the farming Elder Xiao. Immediately, he could feel that Elder Xiao was not a person, but rather the entire world fused into a person. Even as he brandished the hoe over and over again, all he could sense in Elder Xiao was the immeasurable amount of profound mysteries of the world. Jianchen's omnipresence continued to spread until it reached 15 kilometers, before he had finally hit his limit. After drinking the 100-grass wine, Jianchen's mind had improved by leaps and bounds. To him, this was certainly something to celebrate over. Master. Suddenly deep within Jianchen's mind, he could hear a faint voice. Soon after, he felt just where the voice was coming from, and was instantly shocked. Master, I can finally communicate with you. It was just then that Jianchen could heard the inexplicable joy in the voice. You're the azure and violet sword spirits? Jianchen spoke with a bit of a stammer. Master, I am Ziying, you may call me Xiaozi, spoke the Ziying sword spirit. Its voice sounded rather masculine and youthful. Master, I am Qingsua, you may call me Xiaoqing. Suddenly, another soft voice could be heard. This one was as pleasant sounding as a skylark. Jianchen couldn't help but submerge himself into his consciousness. At that moment within the chaotic space of his mind, the multicolored stone could no longer be seen floating around. In its place were two strange people. Both were around the age of 2, while one was a handsome male. The other was a beautiful female that complemented the male perfectly. The male had violet hair that seemed to droop all the way down to his chest. He wore a classic violet changpao and had eyes that glowed with a curious violet shade. The female wore an azure cheongsam that suited her long azure hair quite nicely. Her appearance was unrivaled and her azure eyes would cause any male to choke up. Jianchen's chest began to heave, and his tongue started to stop working as he looked at the golden couple. It was finally with a stammer that he spoke. You two, are you two the sword spirits? Yes, master. I am Ziying, she is Qingxua. The violet-robed man spoke with a smile. Jianchen was speechless. He knew about the situation regarding the sword spirits, but he still found it hard to believe that the sword spirits would unexpectedly gain a human form within his consciousness. After a moment, Jianchen sucked in his breath and attempted to calm himself once more. Staring at the sword spirits, he spoke. I didn't think that we would met in such a manner. Has your energy been fully recovered? Ziying went silent for a moment before shaking his head. Master, we are still very weak. It is only because of the 100-grass wine that we were able to recover enough strength to take on physical forms and talk. Call me Jianchen, not master. I am no master to you, we can just be fellow friends. Jianchen grimaced at the word master. Master, when we entered your body, we submitted to you. You are the master of Ziying and Qingxua. Qingxua spoke with a pleasant sound. Qingxua's words had caused Jianchen to think back to when he had originally died. It was after that moment that he was born in such an unfamiliar world. That's right. I can still remember when I died. Was it because of you two that I was reincarnated into this world? Hearing this, Qingxua and Ziying both looked at each other in silence before Ziying opened his mouth. Master, at that time it was indeed Qingxua and I that brought you to this planet. In the previous planet, you had suffered a tremendous wound, and the qi of the world began to escape your body. If that continued, then you wouldn't have been able to make any improvements. At the very most, you would never reach the strength of a heaven saint master of this world. Because of that, Qingxua and I took you from that planet, but when we entered the crack in space, the both of us suffered tremendous damages. With not much strength remaining, we were unable to deliver you to where we intended, and thus we were only able to relocate you to a planet that was just stronger than your original world. So it really was because of you too, Jianchen muttered. In truth, when he found out about the existence of the two sword spirits, he had already came to such a conclusion as a guess. Master, are you going to blame Ziying and Qingxua? Qingxua spoke with a timid voice. With a cordial smile, Jianchen replied, if it weren't for you two, then I wouldn't have been able to experience such a magical world or come across such a large amount of strength. You've allowed me to grow strong and expand my world. I don't even have enough time to say all of my thanks. So what reason would I have to blame you too? After his reply, Qingxua immediately sighed in relief. Continuing to speak, Jianchen said, what should we do so that you can recover as soon as you can? Master, we cannot recover to our full strength in this world. The qi of this world is far too weak. At the very best, we would be able to recover a small amount of it. Ziying said. Although he had heard what Ziying had said, Jianchen still didn't quite understand. Since he was prioritizing the recovery of the sword spirits, he didn't pay any more attention to what he said. Then what could we do to recover your health for now? Ziying pointed at the multicolored stone floating some distance away. Master, this multicolored immortal crystal is the only thing that can help us for now. For the past few days, Qingxua and I have been absorbing the immortal crystal spirit qi. Multicolored immortal crystal? What is that item? Jianchen asked. Master, the multicolored immortal crystal is a crystal formed from the condensation of an immortal's qi after millions of years. It is not an item of this world, so the fact that we were able to come across it is an inconceivable matter. Millions of years. Jianchen sucked in a deep breath of shock. Master, if only we were able to find more heavenly resources like the 100-grass wine. Otherwise, we will only be able to use the multicolored immortal crystal in order to heal. Seeing how weak the qi of this world is, it serves no use to us. Chapter 387. Chaotic force. Now that the azure and violet sword spirits had taken on human form and were capable of speech, Jianshan could communicate with them with ease. It was no longer as difficult as before where they needed to use telepathy. Jianshan asked many questions that he hadn't understood and began to clear up the problems he had. At the very least, the most important thing he learned was that the sword spirits had been responsible for bringing him to this world. Ah, Qingsua Ziying, is there any chance of me being able to cultivate with Saint Force anymore? Jianshan asked quickly. Losing his Saint Force had left him unable to use his illusionary flash, or the unbelievably fast sword skills that he was renowned for. So this caused him no small amount of unwillingness. The two sword spirits gave each other a look before looking at Jianshan hesitantly. For a quick moment of silence, Ziying finally said, Master, using a special method, you would be able to continue cultivating with Saint Force. However, the Saint Force of this world is far too weak. Too weak? Jianshan asked in disbelief. Ziying nodded his head. Yes, Master. This world's Saint Force is far too weak, so I recommend that you do not restart your cultivation. He stopped talking for a moment before continuing to speak before Jianshan could. Master, with Qingsua and I combined together, we could help you cultivate the chaotic force. Cultivate chaotic force? Is this chaotic force even stronger? Jianshan asked with doubt. Ziying nodded his head. Yes, Master. Chaotic force is the strongest of energy. Then how do I cultivate chaotic force? Jianshan asked with some eagerness. He couldn't allow for such a strong opportunity to run by him. Master, Qingsua and I were born from chaos itself. Our yin and yang bodies were evolved from the chaotic force. And as long as Qingsua and I are combined, then we can extract chaotic force from any energy in the world. Ziying spoke with some satisfaction, as if being able to cultivate chaotic force was an extremely terrific ability. The azure-robed Qingsua opened up her mouth to speak. Master, refining chaotic force requires a tremendous amount of world qi. It would take 10 years to refine even the smallest amount of chaotic force from the small amount of world qi here. Master, the ruler armaments in your hands contain a massive amount of energy. Ziying and Qingsua can use that energy to refine into chaotic force. Upon hearing this, Jianshan was beyond pleased. The ruler armaments were next to useless for him, since he couldn't use their power, making them two pieces of garbage. With the seal of Treasure Mountain on his body, he also had to worry about the Sher family using their special method to find him, which was a shame since Jianshan had no idea how to deal with that. Right now, the Violet and Azure Sword spirits could relieve him of a major headache by refining the energy within the weapons into chaotic force. This would then improve his strength, which was something he definitely agreed with. No problem. The Duanyan sword and the seal of Treasure Mountain I hand over to you then. When will you be able to refine them into chaotic force? Jianshan asked a little impatiently. Seeing the impatient look on Jianshan's face, Ziying and Qingsua began to smile. Master, we can refine the chaotic force whenever you wish. However, because the world qi in this world is quite weak, refining the chaotic force will use up a huge volume of qi. This will make Master's future cultivation even harder. No worries, if worst comes to worst, I'll find even more ruler armaments to take. Jianshan waved his hands without concern. If you wish, then Master, if you could please hand over the ruler armaments. Ziying and Qingsua will refine the chaotic force for you. Qingsua spoke. Retreating from his mind space, Jianshan grabbed both the Duanyan sword and the seal of Treasure Mountain before thinking to himself. Ziying, Qingsua, what is the next step? As soon as he thought of the words, Jianshan felt his mind tremble for a moment before Ziying and Qingsua disappeared from his mind. In the next moment, they had left his mind space and appeared above his head. Right now the two looked like two weak glows of light and mist in human form, but their facial features could not be seen. Lifting his hand, a wave of mysterious energy began to raise out from the seal of Treasure Mountain, floating toward Ziying. It flew up from Jianshan's hand to levitate over his head to where Ziying and Qingsua were floating. Ziying and Qingsua both closed their eyes and lifted out their arms. A faint glow of azure and violet could be seen from their hands before enveloping the seal of Treasure Mountain, spinning it in the same shape of the yin-yang symbol. 2 hours later, The seal of Treasure Mountain had been completely refined and transformed into an extremely pure, but powerful essence that rippled within the hands of Ziying and Qingsu. However, Ziying didn't stop the process there, and began to use his origin energy to hammer it. This went on for another hour, causing the energy to turn gray in color like a ball of smoke. Not only was it faint in color, there was an indescribable air to it. Ziying and Qingsu both raised their hands, causing the gray gas to enter Jianchen's body before resting within his dantian. Master, quick! Use the Azulate Sword Law and transform this chaotic force into your own power. Ziying and Qingsu both spoke in synchronism. Without delay, Jianchen began to do as told. This process only took up 4 hours of Jianchen's time. After those 4 hours, Jianchen had successfully transformed the chaotic force into his own energy. When he looked at the wisp-like energy within his dantian, he couldn't help but ask, Ziying, Qingsu, is this really chaotic force? Yes, Master. This is chaotic force in its initial stage. Ziying spoke. Hearing this, Jianchen was confused. The initial stage of chaotic force? What does that mean? Ziying looked a little embarrassed, but he didn't say anything else. Qingsu began to smile as if trying to apologize for him. Master, this is the weakest amount of chaotic force. The true power found within chaotic force cannot be recreated just yet, because the amount of energy in these ruler armaments is still far too weak, so the true chaotic force cannot be attained. Ah, I understand now. Jianchen spoke with clarity. However, he still only knew some basics regarding the chaotic force. A ruler armament was created after the energy from a 9th-layer Heaven Saint Master crystallized, but he didn't think that the overwhelming power from such an item would result in such a tiny amount of chaotic force. From this, Jianchen couldn't even possibly imagine just how strong the chaotic force would be. Master, the cultivation methods of this continent do not suit the cultivation methods of the chaotic force. In the future, you will only be able to cultivate using the Azulate Sword Law. The Azulate Sword Law were actually a high-leveled cultivation method written by a deity. Written inside are ways to cultivate using the world chi of any world and convert it into chaotic force. Ziying spoke. Cultivation methods were special methods on absorbing and refining energy to become one's own strength. The Azulate Sword Law was truly an extremely mysterious cultivation method that worked in any situation to transform any energy into chaotic force. Nodding his head, Jianchen felt his heart sigh in admiration. He didn't think that the Azulate Sword Law would have such a purpose. Master, but... Ziying opened his mouth once more before hesitation overcame him, as if he didn't know whether or not he should tell him. But what? Qingsu blinked rapidly for a moment as she hesitated before speaking with her light voice. Master, the Azulate Sword Law has 3 volumes. You have the first volume, but not the other 2. What? Jianchen cried out, unable to contain his shock. What could we do about the other 2 volumes then? Ziying and Qingsu both looked at each other briefly, as if hesitating, before Qingsu spoke. Master, in truth, the first volume is only enough for you to cultivate chaotic force. The other 2 volumes are still a long ways away from you. Ziying piped up next. Yes, Master. There is no need for you to look for the other 2 volumes at the moment. 1 is enough for now. Wait until you have more strength, then the other 2 volumes will be attainable. Furthermore, chaotic force is far too tyrannic. Master, if you wish to cultivate chaotic force in the future, then you must have a chaotic body refined as well. Only a chaotic body will be able to withstand the chaotic force. Otherwise, if Master were to try and use the chaotic force, it would cause a tremendous amount of damage. What? Cultivating chaotic force requires a chaotic body? How does one cultivate that? Jianchen asked the 2. He hadn't thought that it would be so complicated. Master, refining the chaotic body is explained within the Azulate Sword Laws. Ziying replied. With that, Jianchen asked a single question in surprise. So it does not require a large amount of chaotic force? It does require a large amount of chaotic force, but Master doesn't need to worry about that now. Ziying spoke carefully. He didn't know just how Jianchen would react to this. Jianchen almost felt dizzy from this conversation, But he wasn't very disappointed. Taking in a long deep breath, he began to mutter, I just knew there wasn't such a thing as a free meal in this world. I didn't think that the chaotic force would be this troublesome. A ruler armament had only a sliver of chaotic force, and a large amount of chaotic force is required to refine the chaotic body. Good heavens! Where would I go to find such a large concentration of this energy? Jianchen didn't quite know if he was happy or sad about this entire situation. Although he had come across a great change within his body, his path would be a long and narrow one for now. Seeing Jianchen's emotions, Qingsua couldn't hold back her silence and began to console him. Master, do not be so discouraged. There is plenty of time in the future, and although the path set out for you is long and hard, you will one day have both the chaotic body and chaotic force. Jianchen quickly calmed down after she spoke. He knew all too well that having a great benefit would require a great price. There was no such thing as a free meal, and there was no such thing as a prize without a price. If one wanted a large amount of power, they had to be ready to pay a large price for it. Forget it, a step is still a step. Ziying Qingsua, let's continue with the Duanyin sword. This item has no use to me and puts me in harm's way. There's no way to tell whether or not the Jetta clan or Shi family will try to track us, so there is no benefit in their prolonged existence. Chapter 388. A strong body after 4 hours. Ziying and Qingsua had refined the energy from the Duanyin sword and transformed it into chaotic force, which made its way into Jianchen's dantian. The 2 wisps of smoke, the chaotic force, weaved around Jianchen's dantian. Although it was there, he couldn't feel tremendous power from the chaotic force. Not even a single speck could be felt, giving him the impression that this gas was almost useless. Despite all of this, Jianchen didn't dare underestimate its power. He could understand perfectly well that these 2 strands of chaotic force were formed from the energy of ruler armaments. Perhaps, the power of the chaotic force was so far outside Jianchen's depth of perception that he couldn't possibly understand the abilities of it. After Ziying and Qingsua had refined the energy from the ruler armaments into chaotic force, they went back into Jianche's mind to rest. This left only Jianchen sitting on his bed to study the chaotic force within his body. The chaotic force is so strong that if one wishes to cultivate with it, one will need the chaotic body first. Without a strong enough body, a regular body will not be able to handle the chaotic force circulating from within. This means that the chaotic force is completely useless for me to use right now. Jianchen thought with furrowed eyebrows. Since this is the case, I will use some of the chaotic force to refine my body and grow stronger. Although the chaotic force is not enough for me to create a chaotic body, it will at the very least allow me to make my current body stronger. Jianchen thought to himself, before quickly coming to a conclusion. After this conclusion, Jianchen immediately began to use some of the chaotic force to refine his body. Fortunately, he had cultivated with the Azulite sword laws for some time, so he had a large amount of experience cultivating with it. Although there was a sparse amount of the chaotic force, it was still strong enough for him. Willing a single strand of chaotic force to leave his dantian, Jianchen finally began to feel the intensity of it as it began to travel throughout. As soon as it started to spread, he began to feel weak, as if his entire body was made from tofu. Wherever the chaotic force traveled, Jianchen's body racked with unbearable pain. His meridians threatened to break, and his inner organs began to fail. Even his blood vessels were starting to tear. Despite it not being a large concentration of chaotic force, it was still a foreign type of energy that Jianchen's body couldn't handle. Jianchen had used the Azulite sword laws to cultivate his body, but it was the very first time he had encountered such a pain from doing so. On the bed, Jianchen's body constantly trembled as his face grew as pale as paper. Beads of sweat continued to drip down his face in large concentration, and his normally handsome face had twisted up from all of the pain with the occasional muscle spasms. Finally, a muffled sound of pain escaped from Jianchen's throat. He could no longer hold back the intensity of the pain, as it had already far surpassed his pain tolerance 1,000 times over. The intense feeling of pain tormented his nerves and mind. Even he could not withstand it and finally fainted from the pain. Ah, master! Just why would you use the chaotic force to temper your body now? Your body as it is not yet adequate. This would only serve to make you suffer. Master, you must endure this. Suddenly, Qingsuo's voice suddenly called out in a hurried manner. Master, you must stay determined. Although the chaotic force is destroying your body, it is also recreating it. After this one time, the next few times will be easier to manage. Ziying's voice could be heard as well. Gritting his teeth in pain, Jianchen couldn't even say a word in response because of the pain. Not even a single syllable could be uttered coherently. As the tiny wisp of chaotic force continued to travel through his body, Jianchen felt as if miniature explosions were happening all throughout his entire body. The pain caused his muscles to break and blood to come out of his pores, dyeing his entire body red. In a flash, the chaotic force had spread throughout every part of his body, and he had already lost a third of his energy. Sighing, Jianchen prepared to use the Radiant Saint Force to heal his body, when Ziying's voice popped up in his mind. Master, don't stop yet. Clenching his teeth, he gave up the idea of resting, and continued to try and withstand the circulation of the chaotic force through his body. After a while, the pain in Jianchen's body began to alleviate as the chaotic force made its third circulation around his body, before disappearing. Seemingly as if he had lost all his energy, Jianchen fell down to the bed below, as if he was a pile of mud. Master, you've managed to take the first step. After experiencing pain for the first time, you will have an easier time cultivating the chaotic force in the future. Naturally, the time the chaotic force was in your body will not be as intense as before. Ziying and Qingsuo's voice both spoke with some joy, but Jianchen was powerless to respond. Laying back on the bed, he thought about the pain he had just experienced with some terror. This pain was something that he couldn't possibly endure again. After resting for a moment to regain some energy, he began to use the Radiant Saint Force within the world to treat his wounds. By now Jianchen's mind ability was extraordinarily strong. His ability to control the Radiant Saint Force was far better than before, so the entire room basked in the milky white glow. However, since it was daytime, the light wasn't all too obvious, and would escape any regular person's notice. This time, Jianchen had only spent 2 hours before his body was fully recovered, since the healing effect was far stronger than before. Jianchen stood up from his bed and inspected his body. This time, he could feel that his body was definitely stronger than before, but however much stronger he was now he didn't know. Noticing that his body and clothes were drenched in blood, Jianchen took out a towel and wiped himself clean before putting on a new pair of white robes and leaving the room. Right now it was already noon. Spreading out his senses, Jianchen quickly found out where little Fatty was and soared over to him. Because Jianchen was flying toward little Fatty in the direction he was facing, the Fatty quickly noticed Jianchen. Stopping what he was doing, little Fatty looked at Jianchen respectfully. Jianchen, flying in the air must be great, huh? Smiling, Jianchen replied, Little Fatty, you have an amazing father and grandfather. I believe that you will be able to reach the Heaven Saint Master realm soon enough. It's far too early to see. I heard my father say that he was 56 years old when he became a Heaven Saint Master. I'm only 21 years old. That means I've still 30 years to go. Little Fatty spoke somewhat subdued. He was still only a primary Great Saint Master that had only made the breakthrough a month ago. However, being a Great Saint Master at the age of 21 was the sign of a genius within the Tianyuan continent. Furthermore, he had done so by painstakingly cultivating by himself without any other resources. Slapping Little Fatty's shoulder, he consoled him. Little Fatty, don't be discouraged. Your current prowess is already great. In the outside world, the amount of people that reached the Great Saint Master realm at your age can be counted on your fingers. At the very mention of the outside world, Little Fatty's eyes lit up straight away. His eyes stared into Jianchen as he asked, Really? Jianchen? Then I would be considered amazing in the outside world? That's. Little Fatty, I'll tell you about that later. I came to find you for your help. Jianchen quickly avoided the subject. What's the problem? Speak, Jianchen, I'll definitely help you. Little Fatty immediately stood straight up and pledged. Taking a few steps back, Jianshan spoke honestly. Little Fatty, use your saint weapon to strike me. Wah, attack you. Little Fatty was stunned at the request. That's right. Little Fatty, even if you strike me, you don't have to worry since it won't do much damage. Jianshan spoke seriously. Little Fatty began to hesitate for a moment. But when he thought about how Jianshan was a heaven saint master, his heart began to calm down. Fine then, but you can't hit me. I'm not a match for you by any means. With that, Little Fatty's saint weapon appeared in his hand in the form of a pitch-black battle axe. Seeing this, Jianshan looked at Little Fatty with some surprise. Little Fatty, don't tell me you have a dark attributed saint force? He nodded his head. That's right. My father told me that the dark attribute is a rarely seen thing, but my grandfather has the same attribute as well. Elder Xiao is also a dark attribute cultivator? Jianshan thought, but he was quickly cut out from his thoughts as Little Fatty spoke. Jianshan, be careful, I'm going to strike. Little Fatty's battle axe began to glow a dangerous dark color before he charged straight for Jianshan. Because Little Fatty was under the misunderstanding that Jianshan had wanted to test his own strength, he didn't hold back his strength at all and swung his axe. There was only a flash of dark light as Little Fatty's axe ripped through the sky and smashed against Jianshan's shoulder. The violent amount of saint force rippled through his saint weapon before ripping apart Jianshan's clothes at the shoulders, revealing the pale white skin underneath. Seeing how Jianshan hadn't dodged at all and received the full blunt of the attack, Little Fatty's face grew white as he cried, Jianshan, why didn't you dodge? In the next moment, his eyes widened as he looked on in disbelief. That was because he had noticed that Jianshan had received no damage at all despite putting up no defense. At the very most, there was a faint impression on his shoulder. Just how is that possible? Am I going blind or something? Little Fatty couldn't believe his eyes. He had swung with all of his might, but his strike hadn't even managed to break the skin. Ha 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 ha. Seeing just how he had taken no damage at all, Jianshan began to laugh with a great smile. His heart had soared with joy at this. A chaotic body was extremely strong. His body had become extremely strong after tempering it with just a single wisp of chaotic force. If he continued to temper his body like this, an Earth Saint Master, or even a Heaven Saint Master would not be able to harm him. Chapter 389. The road home. Jianshan, your body, just how is it so strong? Are you made of iron or something? Little Fatty's eyes grew wide as he looked at the small mark on Jianshan's body. Taking out a new robe from his space ring, Jianshan laughed. Being made of iron would be a stretch, but my body is definitely stronger than an ordinary person. There was some fascination to Little Fatty's eyes as he spoke. How did you strengthen it? It's like you transformed your body. Laughing, Jianshan didn't give an answer. Looking at the still unfinished field, Jianshan asked, Little Fatty, do you need my help? Yes, of course. My dad and grandfather went to plant corn, and I'm left with all the vegetables here. You came here just in time. With 2 people, it'll take no time at all to finish the rest of the planting. Little Fatty spoke very casually with Jianshan and handed several seeds to him. I'll plant on this side. You go to that side. With the 2 of us working, we'll be able to finish this before dinner. Planting the seeds with Little Fatty, Jianshan spoke. Little Fatty, it is very possible that I will be leaving this place soon. Little Fatty's hand shook for a brief moment before he continued to silently work in the fields. Not too long after, he finally uttered a single sentence. I knew that life here wouldn't work out for you. Sooner or later, you would have left for the outside world. Letting out a long breath of air, Jianshan spoke. Little Fatty, I will talk to your grandfather tonight and have him consent to you being able to explore the outside world. You staying here forever is no suitable way of living. With your talent, staying here would just bury it. Jianshan, just what is the outside world like? Little Fatty stared at Jianshan with a fixated gaze as he waited for an answer. He had grown up in this secluded village without ever leaving the valley. Any information he knew from the outside world had been learned from word of mouth. He had never once seen it for himself, not knowing just how large it was. The outside world is huge, tremendous even. There are many people with many wondrous things. At the same time, the world is also very cruel and complex. Little fatty, when you see the outside world for yourself, you will come to understand. Jianshan spoke. But my grandfather would never let me leave. Little fatty's face grew a little sad at that. I will talk with your grandfather tonight, and try to convince him. Other than talking to his grandfather, Jianshan had no other solution. Elder Xiao was a person with an immeasurable amount of power. Jianshan had no wish to offend him. In a flash, the sun had begun to set to the west, and the night began to overtake the skies. The bright red rays from the sunset could still be seen splashing across the sky, as the chimneys in the village bellowed smoke into the air and danced in the wind. In a hurry, the two men quickly walked back home. After walking to their own rooms, Jianshan quickly went into his room to check up on the tiger cub. Right now, the tiger cub was sleeping, as the heavenly resources it ate earlier had not yet finished being absorbed. Seeing how the tiger was safe and sound, Jianshan left the room in relief before eating dinner with the rest of the family. However, there was one less pair of plates and chopsticks. Seeing this empty space, little fatty asked, "Grandfather, where is father?" "Little fatty, your father has some matters to take care of. Eat your meal." Elder Xiao smiled kindly with an affectionate gaze toward the fatty. "Got it," little fatty replied before growing slightly dark. He knew that with his father had gone to the outside world, the world that he himself yearned to go to. Jianshan's eyes flickered over to Elder Xiao for a moment as he hesitated. Then he finally opened his mouth and spoke. "Elder Xiao, have you never thought about little fatty going out to gain some experience?" As he spoke, Jianshan's eyes stared heavily at Elder Xiao. As expected, the elder's face began to change in color, but Jianshan quickly spoke up before Elder Xiao could reply. "Elder Xiao, allowing little fatty to live in this village his entire life would be detrimental to him. If he lives here for his entire life, little fatty will miss out on the many pleasures in life. Living here would not truly be growing up. If he doesn't experience the wind and rain of the outside world, he won't experience a true growth. I'm also sure you know of little fatty's dislike for this life. If you care for little fatty's growth, you shouldn't keep him forever locked up in this village. This is no way to become an adult. In the end, this would only serve to harm him instead of helping." Hearing this, the elder went quiet for a moment. He had traveled the continent himself for many years and experienced many things, so he could understand little fatty's desire perfectly clear. The problem was that he truly did not wish for little fatty to venture out into the outside world. With his countless experiences, he had seen straight through the very essence of the world, and now he only desired for little fatty to live safely within the valley. If he stayed in this valley, then little fatty would stay as pure and innocent as snow without being polluted by the mortal world. Jianshan continued to fire off reason after reason for the elder to hear for the sake of allowing little fatty to leave the valley. Racking his mind for any reason imaginable, Jianshan tried his best to use them all as an argument. As if Jianshan had addressed each of Elder Xiao's worries, he was completely silent throughout the meal and ate in a stiff-like movement. "Grandfather, it wouldn't be right to grow up without seeing the outside world at least once. I really wish to go out just once." Little fatty looked at his grandfather almost pathetically. "Father, Jianshan speaks the truth. I know that you have reached a realm that we cannot even dream of seeing, and seen things we have not seen. But little fatty is an inexperienced great saint master who has not experienced many things. He has no idea what goes on in the outside world, and the things you've seen, he has not. If he does not go travel the world, then he will never mature as an adult. Father, if you truly look out for little fatty's best interests, let him experience the world for himself and increase his knowledge. If he comes across some trouble in the future, he must learn to face it with his own power." Little fatty's mother spoke out earnestly with a kind yet naturally refined voice. Her words were filled with the bearings of a refined woman, one that came from a wealthy family. At Jianshan's and little fatty's mother's twin-prong assault, Elder Xiao finally let out a long sigh. Forget it, forget it. Your words are not without flaws. I was stubborn for far too long. Little fatty, If you truly wish to explore the outside world, your grandfather will not stop you. Really? You'll really let me explore the outside world? Little Fatty was overjoyed. Seeing the look of pure joy on Little Fatty's face, Elder Shio couldn't help but sigh to himself mentally. Looking into his heart, he concluded that when he made Little Fatty stay here, it was the wrong choice of action. Placing another mouthful of food into his mouth, Elder Shio said, "Little Fatty, if you want to leave, then your grandfather won't stop you. But you must have the strength of an Earth Saint Master before you can go." "All right, Father. I'll work hard at cultivating and make the breakthrough to become an Earth Saint Master." Little Fatty was not discouraged at all. Seeing how happy Little Fatty was, even his mother couldn't help but let out a smile as well. 3 days quickly went by peacefully. On the third day, Jianchen and Little Fatty were both cutting down timber in order to rebuild the burned-down house Jianchen was in. This was the promise that Jianchen had made. After completing the house, Jianchen had bid farewell after promising that the two would meet a year from now at this spot. When Little Fatty becomes an Earth Saint Master, they would leave together. Until then, Jianchen would leave with the tiger cub. Before he left, however, Jianchen held a space ring. This was given to him by Elder Shio, and contained many of the heavenly resources from the nearby mountain ranges. For the sake of the tiger cub, these resources were given to Jianchen. With the tiger cub, Jianchen flew far away from the valley without stopping, so that he could find a space gate to return to the Jessen Kingdom. The distance from here to the Jessen Kingdom was far too wide. Even if Jianchen were to fly the entire distance without stopping, it would take a tremendous amount of time and energy. So, the only solution was to use a space gate. Unfortunately, space gates were exceedingly rare throughout the Tianyuan continent. Although there was a space gate in Mercenary City, he wasn't able to use that one. Other than Mercenary City, however, Jianchen had no idea where the closest space gate could be. MRR, MRR. The tiger cub suddenly began to growl, breaking Jianchen out of his thoughts. Looking down, he could only see the cub staring off in the distance at some large piece of land, while both of its paws swung wildly in midair. Jianchen was unable to figure out just what the cub was trying to do, or what it was thinking about. MRR, MRR. The tiger cub's rear paws pressed against Jianchen's chest as its front two paws scratched in the direction of the forest. The wings on its back began to unfold almost as if it was about to fly out from Jianchen's embrace. Holding the cub tightly, Jianchen gently caressed its head before following the cub's stare and landing on a nearby tree branch. Transitioning to the ground, the cub leaped down and began to break out into a wild run towards several trees that were hundreds of meters tall. When Jianchen arrived, he couldn't help but to laugh out loud. It turns out that this place was filled with spirit mushrooms. They were purple in color and weren't all too large. At the very most, they were 20 centimeters tall and 10 centimeters wide. But when the tiger cub saw them, its mouth began to water, allowing Jianchen to realize these were heavenly resources. Although the size and age of a spirit mushroom was generally small and young, not every heavenly resource needed to be old in age or big in shape. Carefully picking some of the spirit mushrooms, he gathered some for the impatient tiger cub, and began to feed them to the cub, who purred affectionately. "Come and eat some." Jianchen laughed as he fed them one by one into the cub's jaws. With a cheerful purr, the cub continued to swallow the mushrooms before quickly going into hibernation to absorb their energy. Chapter 390. Qinhuang Kingdom. The road was peaceful once more. Jianchen never met another flying magical beast, as he flew past the mountain ranges. Once past the mountain ranges, Jianchen was flying 1,000 meters in the air, where the cold winds constantly blew against his body. His white robes fluttered in the wind with a flapping sound. His left hand held the white tiger cub, and his right hand held a map he had gotten from his space ring. This map contained details of the surrounding area to a good extent, but the Jessen Kingdom was still too far away, so Jianchen couldn't use the map to travel there. Jianchen's eyes scoured the map as he looked at all of the nearby kingdoms in the area around Mercenary City. For a brief moment, his eyes looked back to Mercenary City and gave a small sigh before looking elsewhere. He knew that he had more than enough strength to help the Jesson kingdom in its time of need. But because he had no idea on the current circumstances of the kingdom, he needed to get back there as soon as possible. If he waited too long, then the Jesson kingdom would be overrun and his family exterminated. To Jianchen, the latter was something he was not willing to see nor experience. So his only goal was to find a space gate and then use it to travel to the Jesson kingdom in the fastest way possible. Suddenly, the kingdom Qinghuang popped up in Jianchen's eyes. Taking a look, Jianchen's eyes began to sparkle as he quickly thought back to the friend he made, Qin Ji, during the gathering of the mercenaries. His hands began to shake as he took out the piece of jade from his space ring. On the jade piece, there was the single word for Qin engraved on it. This was the gift that Qin Ji had given to him before the two had parted. Looking at the considerably expensive piece of jade in his hands, Jianchen began to hum as he thought to himself. Qin Ji has a ruler armament and a barrier protecting him. That would mean the Qinghuang kingdom is quite strong. Perhaps they would have a space gate. Jianchen suddenly came to a stop in midair as he hesitated. With a final conclusion, he started to fly toward the Qinghuang kingdom. Whether or not the kingdom had a space gate, he would give it a try. The Qinghuang kingdom was only 100,000 meters north of Mercenary City, making the distance from where he was to the kingdom approximately 120,000 kilometers. If he wanted to go there, it would take a considerable amount of time. Using the wind elements in the world to help speed him up, Jianchen began to travel at a pace that was relatively slower than the time when he had used the Heaven's Stolen Fortune and the illusionary flash combined. However, it still took him 2 hours in order to travel 1,500 kilometers. In this manner, 24 hours would be enough for him to travel nearly 20,000 kilometers. In 7 days, Jianchen had finally arrived at the border of the Qinghuang kingdom. These 7 days had been taxing for Jianchen. He had very few breaks, and the tiger cub constantly ate the heavenly resources before falling asleep right after. However, the tiger cub was growing at a decent speed now. His body was already a meter long and already weighed close to 50 kilograms. This, however, made holding the cub to his chest very difficult. Moreover, the cub was already at the level of a Class 2 magical beast. Because of the cub's innate nature of being a heavenly tiger god, it could constantly devour the heavenly resources without a problem, unlike humans who use monster cores. After a while, a human would come across troubles that would shake their foundation and bring about major damages if they did not regulate their usage of monster cores. But this tiger did not have such a limitation. In front of him, there was a 100-meter-tall ancient wall that stretched beyond the lands like a long dragon, giving anyone the impression that they were looking at a mountain range instead. On top of the ancient gates was a gigantic board that said 3 words, Qinghuang Kingdom. This was the stronghold of the Qinghuang kingdom. As he drew closer, the originally quiet stronghold began to buzz with activity. Floating 1,000 meters high in the air, he could see the ant-like people down below flowing in and out of the stronghold, trading their wares. Jianchen didn't bother with going through the gates, and instead flew overhead without bothering to hide himself either. Although his movements had not gone unnoticed by several soldiers, the soldiers did nothing to stop him. Instead, they continued to watch him fly by with envious looks. Heaven Saint Masters were individuals that commanded this privilege of being able to go as they pleased without being stopped. The Qinghuang kingdom was extraordinarily large, 4 or 5 times larger than the Jesson kingdom. After traveling for another 10,000 kilometers, he finally reached the capital city, Qinghuang City. This was a king city, a city that was second in rank compared to 7 of the continent's capital cities, but its grandeur was great nonetheless. Flying into Qinghuang City, he drew close to the palace and descended onto the ground while holding the tiger cub. Together, the two continued inside. "Halt! What are you doing?" Several guards at the Great Saint Master level instantly moved forward to obstruct Jianchen's path. Jianchen flashed the jade piece and spoke. "I am looking for Qinji." "Outrageous! Just how dare you call the third prince so casually?" One of the rear guards instantly rebuked. "Third prince?" At this, Jianchen's heart skipped a beat. He had no idea that Qin Ji held such an illustrious position within the kingdom. When one of the vanguards heard Jian Shen call out Qin Ji's name, his eyes narrowed dangerously. However, when he saw Jian Shen hold up the jade piece, he started with a cry. "That is the Qinhuang jade given from His Majesty." At this, the guard that had cursed out from the back instantly clutched at his neck and retreated without a sound. "My lord, if you would allow me to inspect the jade piece." The vanguard head spoke out courteously, a 180-degree shift from just a moment ago. Without any complaints, Jian Shen handed over the jade piece to the guard. That guard accepted it with a polite manner and began to carefully turn and rotate the piece in order to inspect it. After ensuring that it was authentic, he gave it back and spoke. "My lord, if you could give us your name, we will report it to the third prince at once." "Jian Shen. Lord Jian Shen, please wait a moment." The guard saluted as he called out for a person to come close. Whispering an order into his ear, he sent the man to go running into the palace straight away. The time Jian Shen had spent waiting was not short. After an hour of waiting, a luxuriously dressed youth came walking out of the palace in a hurry. Right behind him were two beautiful-looking women. "We greet the third prince." When the youth came out, the dozen great Saint Master guards all immediately knelt down and cupped their hands in greeting. This youth was Qin Ji. All raised then. Qin Ji spoke calmly before looking toward Jian Shen. However, when he saw just how he looked, Qin Ji's face was surprised for a moment before laughing. "Brother Jian Shen, I had no idea that it was really you. You've really changed this time. Not only is your hair gone, but even your eyebrows and eyelashes too. Did you get roasted by a fire? I could barely recognize you." Hearing this, Jian Shen could only chuckle in embarrassment. "The recent weeks have been quite troublesome, so I look rather pitiful right now." After exchanging several words, Qin Ji ushered Jian Shen into the palace, where a scrumptious feast was laid out in a palace hall made of gold and splendor for his welcome. During the feast, Jian Shen and Qin Ji both talked joyously about many things, as if they were good friends that had not met in years. Every so often, a great big laughter could be heard from one of the two. After the meal was eaten and the wine was drunk, Jian Shen arrived at the heart of the matter. With a grim face he asked, "Brother Qin Ji, I came to you today for your help on an important matter." Qin Ji had already known Jian Shen was not the type of person to visit a temple without a cause, so he laughed. "Brother Jian Shen, what is it that you need my help on? If I can do it, then I, Qin Ji, will not hesitate to do so." With an even more serious expression he spoke, "Brother Qin Ji, I am in dire need of a space gate. Would you know whether the Qinhuang kingdom has one or knows the location of one?" For a moment, Qin Ji stared blankly, but he quickly began to laugh in relief. "And here I thought it was something major." "Brother Jian Shen, you were correct in coming to the Qinhuang kingdom for a space gate. Aside from Mercenary City, Qinhuang City is the only one to have a space gate within 100,000 kilometers. Jian Shen was overjoyed to hear this. "Brother Qin Ji, then I must ask of you, would I be able to have you help me use the space gate?" Continuing to laugh, Qin Ji replied, "Brother Jian Shen, you needn't worry. Although the space gate within the Qinhuang kingdom isn't open for foreigners, there are always exceptions to everything. Just let me talk to my father. It shouldn't be a problem." "Is that so? Then I'd like to thank Brother Qin Ji." Jian Shen looked relieved and exhilarated to hear that he would be able to use the space gate to return to the Jessen kingdom. Qin Ji placed another morsel of food from his chopsticks and began to chew with joy. Speaking with some food still in his mouth, Qin Ji spoke. "However, Brother Jian Shen, I suggest you wait 3 days before using the space gate to leave." "Why is that?" Jian Shen asked. "In 2 days of time, it will be my father's 50th birthday. That day will be extremely lively, and many nobles from many clans will come to celebrate. As my friend, I hope that you would celebrate it with me." Chapter 391. Provocation. Jian Shen hadn't any desire to decline Qin Ji's request, so he agreed to it quite enthusiastically. As a result, Jian Shen came to live within the Qinhuang palace with the lifestyle of an immortal, But this was not the lifestyle that Jianchen was accustomed to. At night, he would sleep within one of the guest rooms with several armored guards, and even some maids waiting outside. The first were to guard Jianchen, while the latter were to serve him. Even when he walked around the palace, several guards and maids would follow from behind. If it weren't for the fact that Jianchen knew that all wealthy men had such a privileged life like this, he would have assumed that they were here to supervise him for any dangerous activity toward the palace. On the second day, Qin Ji had woken up Jianchen early in the morning, before taking him on a stroll around the palace. On the stroll, he pointed out many of the different types of scenery within the place. Jianchen never brought the tiger cub with him, since he didn't wish for the cub to be subjected to the eyes of a lord. So, to ensure that the cub was safe, he would feed it a large amount of heavenly resources, and would wait for it to fall into a deep sleep before walking out. The palace was extraordinarily large, and even after walking for almost the entire day, they had only managed to travel 2/3 of it. Some of the remaining areas were forbidden to outsiders, however. In the meanwhile, Qin Ji had introduced Jianchen to many different lords and the daughters of the nobles. Their ages weren't all that too far away from the two, but whenever Qin Ji introduced Jianchen, he only said that Jianchen was a friend made from a personal friendship. Thus, the lords gave Jianchen contemptuous looks. Maintaining a look of resoluteness, Jianchen said nothing. However, the illustrious daughters of the nobles oftentimes gave him strange looks. Some of them even spoke to Jianchen with a friendly manner, and exposed their intent to be friends clearly. However, this newfound popularity of Jianchen had earned the ire of even more nobles. The majority of them had already started to give Jianchen envious and heated looks. Straight after Qin Ji and Jianchen had split ways, many of the nobles had already ordered for someone to inquire about Jianchen's identity and background. In the end, many of them couldn't help but sigh in relief as they heard that Jianchen wasn't a part of any political power and was an unknown entity. In accordance to their guesses, even if Jianchen had some type of background, the party behind him was far too inferior to be talked about in public. In the evening, Jianchen had finished the daytime activities and returned to Qin Ji's palace to eat a meal. This was his personal abode, and was suited with many different facilities for his every need. Just as Qin Ji and Jianchen were enjoying their meal, an armored soldier suddenly came into the palace and knelt to the ground respectfully. A report for the third prince. Princess Qin Shuang, Princess Qin Yubing, and the Princess of Funan have arrived at the Flowing Clouds Palace. The Flowing Clouds Palace was the name of Qin Ji's palace. Hearing this, Qin Ji's eyebrows furrowed together as he muttered, "Strange, what are they up to?" Then, as if coming to a realization, he gave a meaningful look to Jianchen and laughed. "Then let them in." "Yes, third prince." The guard spoke before retreating outside. After the guard had left, Qin Ji toasted a cup with Jianchen. "Brother Jianchen, the relationship between the three of them and me is not anything significant. This is the first time they've come to my palace. It seems that it's because of you." Jianchen cleaned off the wine cup with a bitter smile. "Brother Qin Ji, you speak so sarcastically." Widening his eyes, Qin Ji spoke sternly. "Sarcasm? I am not. Jianchen, if you don't believe me, then just wait and see." Very soon, 3 beautiful flower-like women walked into the palace. These 3 young princesses were the 3 princesses he had met in the imperial palace during the day. Princess Qin Shuang gave an unruly wink toward Qin Ji as she spoke. "Elder brother, Qin Shuang has grown so much, and yet you're not welcoming me into your palace for the first time?" Laughing, Qin Ji spoke. "Welcome, welcome. How could I not welcome you? Sisters, Princess of Funan, please come sit and eat." Maid. Another 3 sets of dinnerware. The 2 princesses and the Princess of Funan were all outspoken women, but their words were filled with noble auras, and they spoke of their thanks to Qin Ji. As the 3 sat down, Qin Yubing cast a glance toward Jianchen before speaking to Qin Ji. "Ah, elder brother, you haven't introduced your sister to your friend here. Your sister is very curious. Just how did you two meet?" Giving a quick wink to Jianchen, he laughed and explained, "There's no harm in telling you. Brother Jianchen and I actually met at the gathering of the mercenaries. The two of us became close friends straight away. Furthermore, this brother of mine is actually the king of mercenaries. Ah, so he is the Jianchen who won first place at the gathering of the mercenaries. The three princesses looked on in shock. Their opinion of Jianchen had changed drastically, their eyes shining strangely bright. Seeing how the princess's eyes were starting to sparkle, Jianchen couldn't help but give a small smile before glaring at Qinji. Pretending to not have seen it, Qinji's lips curled into a small smile as he continued to eat the meal on the table with a relished gusto. Wah! So you're really strong, Jianchen. If you were able to become the first place ranker at the gathering of the mercenaries, then that means you're stronger than our elder brother. Come, I Situyen toast you. The princess of Funan immediately raised a glass as she spoke to Jianchen with a chivalrous tone. Following Situyen's example, Qin Shuang and Qin Yubing both raised their glasses, as well as they toasted Jianchen. Unwilling to shirk away from this, Jianchen stood up and held up his own glass in response to the three princess' kind words. Touching cups with the there, he was just about to bring it up to his own mouth before a loud cry came out from outside. Lord Xiaohan, you can't go in. Without the permission of the third prince, no one can enter the Flowing Clouds Palace. Lord Xiaohan, please don't make things difficult for us. Without the third prince's permission, you cannot enter this place. Step aside. Who do you think I am? Visiting the third prince should warrant no notice. All of a sudden, a 25-year-old youth came bursting into the palace in a grandiose manner. He wore a magnificent cyan robe, and his eyebrows were creased into a fierce state, giving everyone the idea that he was the type to treat all those under the heavens as someone to be scorned. As he entered, two more armored soldiers came running in as an attempt to block him. But because of the high status of the youth, the two soldiers didn't dare use violence in order to stop him. Third prince, please forgive us. The two soldiers cried out helplessly in forgiveness. Looking expressionlessly at the youth that had just ran in, he waved his hand at the two guards. You two may leave. Yes, third prince. The two cried out graciously before retreating away. Qinji looked at the youth hard and spoke. What business do you have for you to just barge into my Flowing Clouds Palace? Laughing, Xiaohan cupped his hands in greeting. Third prince, tomorrow is His Majesty's 50th birthday. I came here today to discuss of tomorrow's gift to him. If I have disturbed you, then please forgive me for my transgressions. Looking to the side at Qin Shuang, Qin Yubing, and the princess of Funan, his expression grew flabbergasted as he cried. Ah, the two princesses and the princess of Funan are here too? How coincidental. Dear princesses, what might you three be doing here? Xiaohan looked at the four cups being raised in the air. But a sight like this didn't require an idiot to figure out the situation. Xiaohan's eyes held an undisguised amount of envy, but he managed to let out a smile. Dear princesses, could it be that you three are giving a toast to the third prince's friend? Qin Shuang, Qin Yubing, and the princess of Funan looked at him with a look of utter loathing, as if they were all equally disgusted by him. Qin Yubing didn't even spare him another glance, and turned back to Jianchen with the cup raised. Let us toast. Her voice was exceedingly gentle, and would cause any male to feel happy to hear it. After her suggestion, Qin Shuang and the princess of Funan raised their glasses up with a smile. At this sight, Xiaohan's fury burst with envy as he promptly shouted, This cannot do. Three princesses worth their weight of gold, and all of illustrious backgrounds drinking wine with a stranger? Have you lost your identity? Straight away, Qinji exploded with anger as well. His previously expressionless eyes grew icy cold as he thundered. Xiaohan, what is the meaning of your words? Could it be that a friend of I, Qinji, is not worthy of drinking with these three princesses? Giving an apologetic smile, he spoke with a moderate tone. Third prince, please quell your anger. What I said is nothing but the truth. These three princesses have such an illustrious background, and while the friend of the third prince is no ordinary status, he is neither anyone with any special relations. Thus, it is inappropriate for them to drink with him. Chapter 392. Using chopsticks as weapons. Xiaohan's words caused Qinji's face to instantly grow dangerous. But before he could say anything, Qin Yubing spoke out toward Xiao Han with an icy glow. Xiao Han, whomever we drink with is of no concern to you. That's correct. Xiao Han, you are overstepping your boundaries. Whatever we wish to do has nothing to do with you. Qin Shuang said. Xiao Han, you think too highly of yourself. If it were not for your grandfather, you wouldn't even be qualified to step within the Qinhuang Palace. You think that you are amazing, or terrific even so that even elder brother is below your station. Your grandfather has wasted all those magical panaceas, but you are only a great saint master. What a waste. The princess of Funan lashed out verbally, not caring for Xiao Han's honor. Hearing this, Xiao Han's face began to grow darker and darker, and his eyes frosted over. Qin Shuang and Qin Yubing were both princesses of grace and beauty, women that he had constantly chased after. Once he had even announced his affection for the two, but he had been rejected without mercy. Xiao Han did not give up his pursuit, because he believed that with his position within the Qinhuang kingdom, it was only a matter of time before he and one of the two would be engaged. Having his grandfather propose to His Majesty for this arranged marriage would not be too difficult. He had never thought that the two people he had always chased after would unexpectedly go with a stranger unknown to him and speak such unpleasant words for him to hear. To the boisterous noble, this was an unwashable insult. The princess of Funan had especially spoke words that were as sharp as a sword before piercing into his heart. It was a deep insult to him, causing him to grow speechless and pale. Seeing how offended Xiao Han was, Qin Ji began to smile in delight as he spoke. Xiao Han, right now my brother and the three princesses are eating a meal. I've already planned for my father's present, so there is no need to discuss it. You may leave. With that, Qin Ji looked outside. Take Xiao Han back to his place. Immediately two maids came forward and courteously brought Xiao Han away from the palace. Lord Xiao Han, if you please. Xiao Han let out a violent snort of air, as the anger within his heart combusted. All of his extreme anger and envy was forced straight upon Jian Chen's head, and had already reached the highest point of anger. Good. Princess Funan, you say that I am not equal to the third prince. I, Xiao Han, recognize that. That is because compared to the heaven-gifted genius like the third prince, I am inferior. But let me ask you, could that stranger right there be any more amazing? He has only his looks to fall upon. His status, his position, his power. Where does he compare to against me? Xiao Han spoke, emphasizing each word. His anger and envy had already caused him to lose all reasoning. The princess of Funan revealed a sneer as she looked at Xiao Han with scorn. Xiao Han, your position only came to be because of your grandfather and not your own strength. As for strength, she paused for a moment as her vibrant eyes turned to look at Jian Chun while ignoring Xiao Han. As for this man's strength, if you cannot compare to the third prince, then you cannot even hope to stand against Jian Chen. He is nothing. I won't believe that he is stronger than me. Xiao Han snorted in anger as he stared at Jian Chen vehemently. Kid, I Xiao Han challenge you. Do you dare to accept? Jian Chen's eyebrows furrowed together. This Xiao Han was not at all pleasant to talk to. At this moment Qin Ji spoke. Xiao Han, the princess of Funan speaks the truth. You are not an opponent for my brother, so save yourself the disgrace. You too take Lord Xiao Han back. Qin Ji spoke flatly toward the maids. He too did not have a favorable impression of Xiao Han, and didn't bother to honor him. Yes, third prince. Lord Xiao Han. Scram. The two maids tried to lead Xiao Han out of the palace, but he immediately pushed them aside, and glared dangerously at Jian Chen. A strong amount of saint force began to form around his right hand, before forming a giant broadsword before pointing the tip at Jian Chen. Do you dare accept? Xiao Han's provocation caused Qin Ji to explode with anger. Slamming the table he exploded. Xiao Han, the Flowing Clouds Palace will not accept this behavior. If you continue this behavior, then don't blame Qin Ji for not sparing your face. Xiao Han had already lost his reasoning to his anger, so the third prince's words had gone in one ear, and out the other. Pointing his sword at Jian Chun he repeated, Do you dare accept? Impudence. Qin Ji's palm slammed on the table once more in anger, as if he was about to prepare to deal with this himself. Jianchen lifted his hand to stop Qinji as he stared at Xiaohan. Brother Qinji, if this brother here wishes to challenge me, then I will comply. Qinji hesitated for a moment before nodding his head. Brother Jianchen, then please do be lenient. Please be what? Teach him a good lesson. He annoys us every day to death almost. Qin Shuang spoke in discontent. That's right, I hate him. Qin Yubing had a look filled with disgust. Jianchen looked at Xiaohan. Make your move then. Let's go outside. This palace is too small, and I have no desire to destroy the third prince's palace. He snorted. No need. Jianchen shook his head. I don't feel like moving. You may rest assured. We won't be breaking any part of this place. Jianchen's casual attitude toward him caused Xiaohan's anger to explode 3 times over. How arrogant. I'll make sure you pay the price then. With that, he raised his giant saint weapon and charged straight toward Jianchen. Qin Shuang, Qin Yubing and the Princess of Funan let out a small cry of alarm as they tried to move back to avoid the energy wave. With a snort, Jianchen waved his hand. The chopstick from the table began to float up into the air, with an azure and violet glow to it before shooting straight toward Xiaohan. Following a miserable cry of pain, the chopstick burrowed its way into Xiaohan's right arm to where the bone was, rendering mobility in it impossible. Wow, Jianchen is quite amazing. Too amazing, just too amazing. Jianchen, how strong are you if you could use a single chopstick to beat a great saint master? Jianchen, you absolutely must teach me. The 3 princesses all clapped their hands in adoration of Jianchen. Their eyes were already seeing stars. Seeing the wound on Xiaohan's body, Qinji had let out a sigh in relief. This was the man that the Shi family and the Jetta clan had their young lords killed by. Because of that, he was worried that Jianchen would have taken Xiaohan's life in a fit of anger. Take Xiaohan to treat his wounds. Qinji waved his hand for the 2 maids to take him. Xiaohan was unable to take the pain in his arm, and could only stare poisonously at Jianchen. Without another look back, he walked out from the palace. Even his honor would not allow him to stay here. After Xiaohan had left, Jianchen looked to Qinji. Brother Qinji, just who is this Xiaohan? Qinji sat back down. Xiaohan's position is truly quite unique. Within the palace, there are very few that are equal to the stature of the princes. His grandfather is the imperial tutor, and has an illustrious position as a result. His grandfather's status could rival even my father's. Xiaohan's father was also the imperial army's captain 5 years ago. One time when my father had been a target of a raid, it was Xiaohan's father who had taken the blow for an attempt on his life, causing his death. Because of this, my father has come to love Xiaohan dearly, causing his status to rise up to the rank of a prince. So that's the story. What realm has Xiaohan's grandfather reached? Jianchen asked. Heaven Saint Master. He is a 5th cycle Heaven Saint Master. Qinji spoke seriously. A genius that has reached the 5th cycle Heaven Saint Master realm. Jianchen muttered with a gentle smile. After the meal, the 3 princesses finally parted paths with Jianchen, allowing him to return to his own place to rest. Sitting on top of the bed to think, he knew that it would be the celebration of His Majesty's birthday. He didn't know just what type of present to give to a king. Aside from a heaven tier battle skill, heavenly resources, and a class 6 monster core, Jianchen had essentially nothing to give. The heaven tier battle skill was definitely not an item to be gifted, and a class 6 monster core would not be an item worthy of being gifted to a king of the Qinhuang kingdom. At this moment, a light went off in Jianchen's mind as his hand blurred, causing a small pill to appear in his hand. This was the 2nd class 8 Radiant Spirit pill given to him by Elder Xiao. He wasn't too willing to part with it just yet, so he began to debate on what to do. But this class 8 Radiant Spirit pill is the only item I could give. Jianchen muttered. His Radiant Saint Force was far away from being equal to a class 8 Radiant Saint Force. Plus, with his controlling method, it would be impossible for him to mass-produce them anyways. Chapter 393. Birthday present. The next day, the birthday of the Qinhuang Kingdom's king had officially begun. Jianchen was woken up early by Qin Ji, and the two left together to congratulate him. The palace was especially lively today. Many influential lords and nobles came to personally congratulate the king on this happy occasion. All sorts of political leaders and major powers came, and in short, everyone was of some importance. The Qin Huang kingdom held a lot of power, and was second only to the three great empires. Within the continent, the Qin Huang kingdom was already considered one of the highest powers. Thus, every single territory within the kingdom, and even the subsiding powers bordering the kingdom, had sent men with gifts in order to celebrate this happy occasion. If it were not a lord or princess, it was a prime minister that came. Even several imperial advisors had come to pay their respects. Directly walking toward the main palace hall, Jianchen and Qinji both saw well over 1,000 people standing around. Each one wore gorgeous robes, or were figures that were well known throughout the kingdom. A wave of maids could be seen walking around the place with small platters of food in order to serve the guests. "We greet the third prince. We greet the third prince." Upon seeing Qinji arrive, many of the people there began to cup their hands in salute with extremely respectful greetings. Greeting them all with a kind smile, Qinji responded amiably without any sense of arrogance. Jianchen followed behind Qinji silently. He was perfectly content not being in the limelight, and did not wish for the spotlight to be put onto him. The nobles within the palace naturally paid very little attention to him. The vast majority only believed that Jianchen was an attendant to Qinji, and didn't spare him a second glance. The other part of the crowd took a neutral stance, but some noticed that Jianchen was not any ordinary person. He was neither servile or overbearing in nature, and carried himself with a graceful manner. Despite his age, he walked with a steady step that even a mountain could not attest to. Some of the stronger men in the room could even tell there was a strong pressure coming from him, causing them to look on in shock. "Strange. Why is it that I feel as if I've seen that man walking behind the third prince before? Just where did this feeling come from?" One of the more richly dressed men stared suspiciously at Jianchen as he muttered to himself. He was not the only person to have this hunch. Several other men within the palace had this same exact suspicion. They felt that he was a stranger, but they still couldn't shake off this feeling. "Brother Jianchen, feel free to go rest somewhere. I still have several people to greet." Qinji spoke apologetically toward Jianchen. Today was the 50th birthday of his father, so the king could not greet any of the people himself. However, these men were all high-ranking people, some from the surrounding kingdoms. They couldn't be received by just anyone, so the children would have to take up the mantle. Even this was considered to be a good opportunity for the prince to get to know people. It was with that excuse that they could make a foundation for political support when the time came to fight for the throne. Jianchen was neither a child nor an ignorant farmer from the thatched villages. He understood clearly just how important this gathering was for Qinji, and did not argue. Taking a small snack to eat, he began to stroll to the closest corner of the room before enjoying the delicious-tasting pastries. Just then, a cyan-robed middle-aged man sat down right next to Jianchen. Nodding with a smile toward the eating Jianchen, he spoke. "Fellow brother, have we seen each other somewhere before?" Jianchen lifted his head to look at the man. Seeing that the man was unfamiliar to him, he shook his head. "You must be mistaken. Perhaps I look like someone else?" Still skeptical, the man nodded his head. "Perhaps so. My name is Tai Muzhuang. What might your name be?" Jianchen laughed. "This one is just a nobody and not even a member of the Qin Huang kingdom. My name won't be recognizable by sire, even if this one speaks of it." Jianchen finished off the pastry and left to go get a new one. After Jianchen had left, Tai Muzhuang narrowed his eyes in doubt. "An unknown nobody? Is that really the truth? Why do I feel that I've seen you from somewhere?" Even with his mutterings, he had been unable to think of an answer, so Tai Muzhuang had no other choice but to leave as well. "His Majesty the King has arrived." At that moment, a long drawn-out voice could be heard announcing the arrival of the king. The noise within the palace instantly died out, as everyone turned to look in the direction the cry came from. Everyone could see a golden purple dragon-robed middle-aged man walking into the palace with an intimidating air. Right behind him was a single elder, with a crane-styled hairdo. The king was turning 50 years old, but his appearance made him look as if he was 40 instead. He was smiling widely with eyes that flickered with vigor and wisdom. The Qinhuang Kingdom's king had 12 children. 7 of them were princes, and the other 5 were princesses. The eldest was already 30 years old, and the youngest was only 6. At this moment, those 12 children were walking right behind him. Greet His Majesty, and wish him a long life and glory to the Qinhuang Kingdom. The entire palace began to speak out the words, "Long live and 1,000 years." Within the Tianyuan continent, these were the highest words of celebration that generally only the nobility of countries could hear. That was because 1,000 years was the lifespan of a heaven saint master. Saint rulers and saint kings weren't even able to live past 10,000 years, and were generally within the thousands. Afterward, everyone began to give the gifts they had prepared. The vast majority of the items were all vastly valuable. Some of them were even beyond the scope of what money could be. Apart from this, there was plenty of antique pottery and vases from several people, as well as plenty of heavenly resources that were aged well over 1,000 years. After the majority of the men had presented their gifts, Jianchen came walking forward with a purple and gold box. Striding forward, he presented it to the king with a smile. "There is a Class 8 Radiant Spirit pill within this box. I present this to His Majesty in congratulations on his birthday." Jianchen spoke succinctly without any flowery words. "A Class 8 Radiant Spirit pill? I've heard only a 7th class Radiant Saint Master would be able to produce such a pill. It is a pill that is fully deserving of being called a true healing Catholicon. Not only can it purify any venom, but it could even rescue a person from the jaws of death. A Class 8 Radiant Spirit pill can be rarely seen within the entire continent. This would make even hermits drool at the mouth to have such a life-saving treasure." Upon hearing the words Class 8 Radiant Spirit pill, the entire palace began to burst into commotion and admiration at this item. They all looked at the purple and golden box within Jianchen's hands. Each one believed that such a high-leveled Radiant Spirit pill had gone extinct, since the only Radiant Saint Masters capable of making one were as rare as a phoenix feather. Furthermore, creating just one of these would require a tremendous amount of energy from them. The Class 8 Radiant Spirit pill had moved even the king. If he wanted to obtain some sort of heavenly resource or any other priceless treasure, it was not at all difficult for him. A Class 8 Radiant Spirit pill was a different matter. That was because items that could save one's life were far too priceless to be obtained. Following a stare from the king, a white-robed elder immediately came forth from the crowd. Taking the box from Jianchen's hands, he took out the bottle from within, and then began to inspect the thumb-sized pill from it. This elder was a Radiant Saint Master that would be able to tell how rich the Radiant Saint force was within the pill. After making sure he wasn't wrong, the elder's face lit up in delight as he carefully put the pill back into the box and cupped his hands to the king. "Your Majesty, this is truly a Class 8 Radiant Spirit pill." The elder's voice held an emotional tone to it, since he knew just how rare it was to see such a high-leveled pill. Standing right behind the king, Qin Ji sent an appreciative glance to Jianchen. Even he knew just how priceless a Class 8 Radiant Spirit pill was. For Jianchen to unexpectedly gift such a pill to the king, the meaning would be loud and clear, allowing Qin Ji to feel happy. Even the other people standing by the king's side began to change their opinion of Jianchen by smiling and nodding. A Class 8 Radiant Spirit pill couldn't be given by just anyone. This action from Jianchen had inadvertently solidified his status among everyone in the crowd. Hearing the confirmation from the elder, the king immediately began to laugh as he regarded Jianchen in a new light. "Remarkable brother. It only takes one look to know that you are a giant among the men here. I admit to knowing no noble that would relinquish such a priceless gift, but I am truly grateful. Father, he is called Jianchen, a friend I have made from the outside." Before Jianchen could even say anything, Qin Ji spoke out respectfully to his father. As soon as Qin Ji spoke, several other men began to cry out, "Jianchen! He's Jianchen. It's no wonder I thought he looked familiar. Could he be that very same Jianchen who became the king of mercenaries at the last gathering of the mercenaries? His strength was on par with the Heaven Saint Master. It's no wonder I felt that there was something to him. I've got it. He's that Jian Chun who became the king of mercenaries. I was there for the event, so no wonder I had thought he was familiar looking. It's because his hair is nearly gone so that I was unable to recognize him. Even his eyelashes are gone. Chapter 394. Attacks that influence even the nobility. Hearing the chatter regarding Jian Chun, the influential officials all had flabbergasted expressions on their faces as they stared at Jian Chun one by one in disbelief. Everyone knew that the king of mercenaries was named Jian Chun, but those who had personally seen what Jian Chun had looked like were a small amount. No one could have imagined that Jian Chun was actually very young, even younger than the third prince. In simple math, Jian Chun spent less time cultivating than the third prince, but he was even stronger than him. This led everyone to believe that Jian Chun was a genius of unsurpassed prowess. The king of the Qinhuang kingdom boomed with laughter as he looked at Jian Chun with surprise. Good. Very good. I did not judge you wrongly then. Jian Chun, you are truly a giant among men if you were able to become the king of mercenaries at such a young age. Your future has no limits, and my son will benefit greatly from being acquainted with you. Xiao Han stood within the crowd of people with a look of utter fury at Jian Chun. Biting his lip, he muttered angrily under his breath. I didn't think you would be that nonsensical king of mercenaries. Humph, it doesn't matter who you are, I, Xiao Han, will not let you off easily. Hearing the mutters of Xiao Han, a cyan-robed middle-aged man asked, Xiao Han, could this be the one that humiliated and injured you yesterday? Correct, Uncle Wuxia. You must help me teach him a lesson. Otherwise, this is something I will never be able to swallow. Xiao Han spoke. Wuxia was an apprentice to his grandfather, and was close to him. Wuxia's eyebrows creased together as he thought. I'm afraid it won't be easy. I had no idea that he would be the king of mercenaries. Although I do not know of his strength, he surely has to be stronger than the third prince by a good amount. Furthermore, he has earned the favor His Majesty. If I were to act against him, I would earn the ire of His Majesty in return. Uncle Wuxia, he is only so old. Even if the third prince is no match to him, it doesn't mean that Jian Chun may have used some sort of way to scrape out an unexpected success to become the king of mercenaries. You could challenge him in public and then humiliate him. As for His Majesty, I will naturally let my grandfather take care of that. Xiao Han spoke. Nodding his head slightly, Wuxia spoke. Fine, I was wanting to test his strength anyways. I'd like to see just how strong the rumors say the king of mercenaries is. After knowing that Jian Chun was the king of mercenaries, the king's attitude toward him was far more friendly. On the contrast, when the other princes had heard that Jian Chun was the friend of the third prince, they had all contorted with annoyance. Only two of the younger princes had been able to keep their cool, as if the matter had nothing to do with them. Jian Chun and the king managed to exchange several more words before returning to the crowd. However, at this moment, every single noble and major powers had begun to treat Jian Chun vastly different from before. Charging at him, each one of them tried to get within Jian Chun's good graces. That was because in the past, every single king of the mercenaries had been at the very least a Heaven Saint Master. At the highest, they had been able to make the breakthrough to become a saint ruler. When it came to these people, Jian Chun only politely responded to them, without any deeper meaning to his words. Suddenly, a grand voice could be heard reverberating through the halls, causing all of the noise in the hall to stop instantly. Your Majesty, our Qinhuang kingdom was founded by the military since the ancient past, and defended our country with our military might. Today is the birthday of His Majesty, but why is there a shortage of martial might? This humble servant's hand itches, and wishes to compare notes with the king of mercenaries, Jian Chun. At the same time, I wish to use this show of martial prowess to be the gift to His Majesty. Your Majesty, if you could please allow this. Everyone's head began to turn as they looked at a cyan-robed man kneel to the ground as he spoke respectfully to the king. Hearing this, the king had a faint smile as he introduced Jian Chun to him. Jian Chun, This is the imperial army captain Wuxia." The king had neither denied nor accepted Wuxia's request, and instead gave the right to Jianshen. In the end, he too wanted to see just how strong Jianshen was. Laughing, Jianshen strode forward and cupped his hands. "If Captain Wuxia wishes to compare notes with this one, and put on a show for the king, then let us make this a great present to the king." Laughing joyously, the king spoke. "Very well. If this is your answer, then let us all cheer you both on." With that, the king and an elder walked out of the halls with the entire crowd following after them. Within a large open space, everyone gathered around to watch Jianshen and Wuxia fight, and were in an extremely jubilant mood. A fight between the imperial army captain and the king of mercenaries would definitely be a glorious spectacle. And in everyone's heart, they had wished to see just who would be the winner of the two. Only a few men had seen the king of mercenaries fight, and so they had a profound smile on their faces as they watched. Wuxia held his cyan-colored pike in his hands as he stared at Jianshen fixedly. Although Jianshen was quite young, being the king of mercenaries did not give Wuxia the luxury of underestimating him. Jianshen stood 30 meters away with a smile. Staring at the captain, he spoke. "Captain Wuxia, if you would please start it off." Seeing how Jianshen had not yet taken out his saint weapon to fight, Wuxia's eyebrows creased together with a small glint of fury. In his eyes, seeing Jianshen barehanded was an insult to him. Casting a cold glare and a snort, his legs stamped across the ground as he flew toward Jianshen. At the same time, the pike in his hands began to glow with the wind-attributed saint force as he thrust it forward. Jianshen's face had a slight smile as his right leg stamped on the ground. A thumb-sized stone suddenly shot up before being grabbed by Jianshen with ease. His hand shook for a moment before the pebble then began to glow with an azure and violet light. The pebble shot straight toward the incoming Wuxia. Ding! A crisp sound could be heard as the thumb-sized stone collided against the tip of Wuxia's pike. Following the inconceivably strong impact, Wuxia's arm and pike began to tremble from the force. Looking greatly shocked, the force of the blow had caused Wuxia to stop for a moment before staggering backward several steps. Both of the hands that were carrying the pike were shaking violently, and a small amount of blood could be seen from the web of his hand. Turning pale with fright, Wuxia turned his head to look at Jianshen. Despite all of his strength, a pebble thrown by Jianshen had been able to force him back. This was far too much for Wuxia to accept. Seeing how a single stone thrown by Jianshen had caused Wuxia's hand to bleed, the spectators had gone into an uproar. Each one looked on in disbelief. This display of strength had been nearly as great on their hearts as it was for Wuxia. Could this be a battle skill of Jianshen's? Some people began to ask. Even the king sighed in admiration. He looked at Jianshen in disbelief for a moment, before turning to give a look to the elder beside him. A single pebble had been enough for the captain of the imperial army to stagger backward. This was more than enough to let the king know that Jianshen's strength was far stronger than he initially thought. An Earth Saint Master would not be enough to gauge Jianshen's true strength, so he planned on bringing out a stronger person to do so instead. The elder standing next to the king nodded before walking out. "Jianshen, allow this old man to try." Before giving Jianshen any option, the elder transformed into a blurry image as he charged toward Jianshen. Jianshen's lips curled up with a faint smile as he pointed outward with a finger, causing an azure and violet sword chi to shoot toward the elder. Knowing that Jianshen was exceedingly strong, he didn't dare underestimate him. Forming a fist, he lashed out against the sword chi with a rippling amount of fire saint force. The sword chi was scattered apart by the elder, but there was an eye-catching wound left on top of the elder's hand. Looking at the wound on his hand, the elder's face grew dim. Swiping at the air, the fire element within the world began to congregate around his hand, before instantaneously forming a giant sword of fire. At this sight, Jianshen revealed a sneer before he raised his right hand as well. The fire elements in the world began to gather in his right hand at a faster rate than the elder, and formed a giant sword of fire. No matter if it was color or by temperature, Jianshen's sword seemed much stronger than the elder's. He has control of the energy of the world. How surprising is that? This is the magical power of controlling the energy of the world. Could he have reached the Heaven Saint Master realm? Jian Chen's act of controlling the energy of the world had caused everyone to turn pale with fright. At this moment, everyone had truly believed that Jian Chen was many times stronger than Wuxia. Even the lords and leaders had their eyes wide open as they look at Jian Chen in silent disbelief. A Heaven Saint Master wasn't a new sight to them. However, a Heaven Saint Master this young was something they had never heard of before. How is this possible? Jian Chen has made the breakthrough to become a Heaven Saint Master? Even Qin Ji had a look of surprise as he muttered to himself. The king of the Qinhuang kingdom let out a breath of air as he slowly calmed his nerves. At this moment, he could feel his heart beating rapidly at this sight. A 20-something-year-old Heaven Saint Master would surely ripple across the Tianyuan continent if news were to get out. Is he truly as young as he looks? The Qinhuang kingdom's king spoke with some doubt. Chapter 395. Midair Showdown. When the elder saw Jian Chen form a sword seemingly out of mid-air, his face instantly blanched in shock. But without pause, he condensed his own fire-red great sword and went at Jian Chen to try and slash him. When the elder swung out, so did Jian Chen. Waving his right hand, the sword instantly shot toward the elder. Bang! When both fire-red swords collided against each other, the two swords suddenly exploded with energy, causing an explosive bang to be heard as the entire sky washed over with flames. All around the two combatants, balls of fire could be seen flying everywhere at high speeds and high temperature. Run! Get back! Protect His Majesty! The surrounding spectators instantly spread out as they flew backward, while at the same time, Saint Force of every color appeared to form a protective armor for themselves and anyone of major importance. Seeing the sudden spread of the fire, even the king of the Qinhuang kingdom was surprised. But a white figure suddenly shot towards him, as a cyan-colored man brought both the king and himself into the air by using his wind-attributed Saint Force. With a grab of the king's shoulder, the two of them flew away from the fire. Movement could be seen coming from everywhere, as an Earth Saint Master began to spread out his Saint Force all over the palace. Several armored soldiers immediately flew forward in a hurried manner to form a protective line. At the same time, 4 elders and 2 middle-aged men strode forward from the crowd and circled around the ring of fire. Raising their hands, each one used a fierce blast of wind to curb and control the fire. The sea of flames had already concealed both Jian Chen and the elder he was fighting, but even within the flames, their movements were not hindered in the slightest. Just as the flames sent flying back at them from the 6 men earlier, it was suddenly stopped by an invisible force just 1 meter away. Allow this old man to fight you from above, the elder spoke as he flew 500 meters up into the air, transforming into a speck the size of an ant. The faint element of fire could be seen enveloping his entire body. Not willing to admit defeat, Jian Chen began to use the wind element in the world and gathered it around his body using his mind. Flying straight into the air, he quickly got within 100 meters of the floating elder. What? Why you can control the wind element as well? The elder spoke thunderstruck as he looked at the wind swivel around Jian Chen's body. The cyan-colored light surrounding Jian Chen's body had not gone unnoticed by the audience below. Each one of them cried out in shock, but not as loud as the several hidden Heaven Saint Masters within the crowd. It was almost as if they had seen a monster as their faces contorted in shock. How is this possible? He was clearly a fire-attributed Saint Force cultivator. Just how is he using the wind attribute? Could he be a wind-attributed Saint Force user instead of a fire-attributed Saint Force user? Impossible. There has never been anyone being able to use 2 different elements. He must be using some sort of strange method. Jian Chen, could it be that you are able to control both the fire and wind element? The elder questioned in astonishment. Smiling, Jian Chen replied honestly, correct. I am truly able to control both the fire and wind element. No, that's not possible. Just how could you control 2 elements? There has never been a single person who could do the same before on the continent. The man cried out. There has never been anything that cannot be done. There are still many profound mysteries to the world. All that we know are merely the ones we have stepped into and understood. Although seeing Jian Chun take control of two elements in the world was extremely surprising, the elder calmed himself down quickly. You speak correctly. There are still many things unknown to us in the world. It seems this old man has forgotten himself. Pausing his breath, the fire sword appeared in his hand once more. Today, I shall find out for myself just how strong a wielder of two elements is. Smiling, Jian Chun raised both of his hands. Immediately, all of the pebbles within the nearby pond began to fly up, as if a strange force was pulling it. Breaking through the water, the pebbles all floated around Jian Chun's body ominously. What is the meaning of this? How did the stones suddenly fly up into the air? What power is this? How is he doing it? At this even stranger sight, everyone could only gasp in surprise. Behind two Heaven Saint Master guards, the Qinhuang Kingdom King tilted his head to the sky. This Jian Chun is truly beyond what I imagined. At such a young age, he has reached the Heaven Saint Master realm. A genius like this comes only once every 1,000 years. One of the Heaven Saint Masters looked surprised at that. Why stop at 1,000 years? A talent like his comes every 10,000 years. If his skill grows without any complication, he will be a saint ruler at the very least. Becoming a saint king would be of no problem to him. Hearing this, the king paused in surprise. Even the princes standing behind the king were frightened at this. Struggling to maintain their composure, they looked at Qinji with a mixture of admiration and jealousy. As for Qinji, he had personally seen Jian Chun's amazing prowess with his own eyes before. His mind had already thought of Jian Chun to be stronger than what his own words could say. By now, the Heaven Saint Master had thrown away all notions of belittling Jian Chun. Mustering all of his strength, the flames on his sword had begun to evaporate even the air around it. Jian Chun floated in midair as steady as a mountain, as the wind blew past his figure ferociously. Both of his hands had already formed a fist right in front of his chest as the pebbles floating around him began to meld into the form of a sword that radiated with azure and violet sword chi. Chapter 396, Imperial Protector, Watch My Sword. The elder shouted as he brought the giant sword down toward Jian Chun, with an inferno replacing the blade. Jian Chun's eyes flashed with a tint of the azure and violet shades of color. Right in front of him, the giant sword made from pebbles began to glow even brighter with the same color before shooting straight toward the elder. Bang! Another loud explosion could be heard as the elder's giant sword and the sword made from the pebbles clashed against each other. The flame-like essence from the elder's sword began to slough off in a substantial amount, each piece transforming into shooting stars that spread out in every direction before exploding like a firework would. The attack of the elder had caused some of the pebbles to be crushed into dust, but the remaining part of the sword continued its momentum and flew straight for the elder. With this blocking his forward momentum, the elder suddenly came to a stop as he heard the ear-whistling sound of the sword continue to fly. Staring seriously, he brandished his own sword and slashed out 3 more times with the flame sword, leaving behind an amazing streak of fire from its path as it struck against the pebbles. Ordinarily, the pebbles flying straight for the elder would have been so weak that they would have disintegrated into dust. However, because of the azure and violet sword chi, the pebbles had been hardened beyond their normal durability. So when they crashed against the elder's sword, several explosions could be heard from the resulting strikes. By now, the elder's body was like the flame, and the pebbles the moths. Under Jian Chun's control, the pebbles struck at the elder in every direction possible. Just what is this devilish power? The elder thought to himself. His entire body was already covered with the fire-attributed saint force, as he continued to swat the pebbles away, while trying to find a way out. It was not like he had no desire to strike at Jian Chun, but the azure and violet sword chi surrounding the pebbles reinforced them so much that it was just too much for him to deal with. Even with the saint force covering his body, it was hard to defend against the strikes. With the constant barrage, just moving was difficult enough. Clenching both hands in midair, all of the nearby fire elements in the world suddenly congregated within Jian Chun's hands. In a flash, They transformed to become two swords with fire as the blade. Right as they formed, they transformed into a single streak of fire, as it shot toward the elder with blinding speed and a fiery heat. The heat had been so intense that the surrounding air had turned pink from the distortion. Staring seriously at the two blades shooting at him, the elder brought his own sword up and slammed down on the both of them. Once more, flames burst out from the explosion, and plumes of fire washed over the sky like a series of fireworks. The entire sky was replaced with a sea of flames as they spread from the elder. At this moment, the temperature in the surrounding area had already scaled up to a degree where even the king and the spectators felt as if they were in a steamer basket and were being steamed alive. Jian Chen's eyes continued to glow resplendently with a divine glow as the wind began to pick up in the area, as if a howling storm was approaching. The sounds were like the screams of ghosts and blew the flames that were flying toward Jian Chen back, toward the elder's position. In an instant, the elder was concealed by the flames. Jian Chen knew all too well that a flame of this magnitude would do nothing to a Heaven Saint Masterclass expert. At best, the elder would be worse for wear, but nothing more. Clutching at the sky once more, another sword of fire formed before flying at the elder's position. In an instant, the sword disappeared within the sea of flames without a trace. In the next, a fierce explosion could be heard as the flames suddenly blew apart. A white figure could be seen flying out from the fire. It was the elder. There was no serious damage that could be seen on his body, but he looked disheveled, and his breathing was ragged while his clothes were already threatening to tear at the seams. In all, the elder no longer looked as refined and calm as he did before the fight. Floating in midair, the elder made no move to attack, and instead continued to observe Jian Chen. Jian Chen made no move either. He knew that the elder was only testing for his strength, and was not actually fighting to kill him in a do-or-die match. The flames quickly receded from the skies, causing the temperature to drop as well. At the same time, the elder had a strange look on his face, as if hesitating before finally sighing. This old man admits his loss. Smiling, Jian Chen cupped his hands together. Senior, you must be joking. This was only a test for my strength. Your true strength was not even shown completely. If you were to go all out, the conclusion would have been entirely different. The elder waved his hands dismissively. A loss is a loss. This old man is not someone that cannot accept a loss. Although I did not go all out, the amount of strength you're holding back would be stronger than mine still. Continuing to smile, Jian Chen said no more in opposition to the man, and slowly descended to the ground. The two landed on the ground at the same time in front of the crowd, but not a single voice could be heard. Not even the king nor the relatives of the king dared make a sound, and instead chose to look at the handsome face of the youngster in front of them. Not only was Jian Chen the youngest Heaven Saint Master they knew, but his strength was also beyond anyone's imagination. Even one of the imperial advisors had admitted defeat. At this moment, everyone felt their own strength completely dominated by Jian Chen. At the age of 20-something, he had already become a Heaven Saint Master. By the age of 50, or even 100, just what realm would he step into? Wow, Jian Chen, you are truly amazing to be able to reach the Heaven Saint Master realm. Suddenly from the crowd, the Princess of Funan began to clap and speak her praise. Princess Qin Shuang and Qin Yubing both looked at Jian Chen with a strange look. Aside from those three, the other rich daughters of the other families all began to stare at Jian Chen with a look of adoration and worship. Some of the daughters had even looked utterly entranced by him. Although Jian Chen's hair had all been burnt away, he still retained his handsome looks. Combined with his young age, power as a Heaven Saint Master, and the honor given to him by the king, he was the Prince Charming to all of the rich daughters here. Ha, good. Jian Chen's strength has opened everyone's eyes here. Jian Chen, since you are the friend of Qin Ji, there is no need to see you as an outsider. If this king may, would I be so bold to call you a nephew? The king laughed merrily. Qin Ji had a gentle smile on his as he stood behind the king. At this moment, he could feel a strange feeling of happiness along with some shock. Jian Chen being a Heaven Saint Master was something he was shocked by as well. That was because with Jian Chen's actual age, this was a world-shaking revelation. Accepting the goodwill expressed by the king, Jian Chen accepted this without hesitation. This was something that was more beneficial than harmful, so he cupped his hands together. It would be an honor for this one. Looking pleased, the king spoke with a great smile. Now that this battle is finished, let us all go back. Nephew Jian Chen, let us return to the palace. With that, he led Jian Chen with a friendly wave back toward the palace. On the way, he asked about Jian Chen's well-being and constantly treated him well. Hidden within the crowd, Xiao Han could only look at Jian Chen blankly. After a while, his entire face suddenly slackened. And no way. There's no way. Just how? How is he a heaven saint master? This has to be an illusion. Xiao Han sputtered as he muttered to himself. He was just in too much disbelief. At that moment, the still pale Wuxia walked up to Xiao Han. Seeing the slackened face of surprise, Wuxia sighed with some blame to his voice. You've offended a person. Someone you cannot afford to offend. Even Imperial Advisor Pu Ta wasn't his opponent. It seems that even your grandfather would not be able to win against him. This won't do. I must report this situation to your grandfather. Hearing this, Xiao Han's face blanched as he pulled on Wuxia's arm hopefully. Uncle Wuxia, do you think grandfather will try and get justice for me? Hearing this, Wuxia whipped around to look at Xiao Han fiercely. How could you be so muddle-headed? Don't bring up this again and be careful of what you say. Jian Chen is a heaven saint master with unparalleled skill. He has curried favor with His Majesty, and wouldn't be threatened by your grandfather at all. If you don't know what it means to repent, then even your grandfather will be hurt by this. Turning white, Xiao Han asked with a trembling voice. Uncle Wuxia, what do you think I should do then? Sighing, Wuxia spoke. You should go apologize to Jian Chen. I must report this matter to your grandfather. By the end, I hope we transform this major problem into no problem. Quickly, everyone returned to the previous palace hall. The king led Jian Chen to the front, before sitting on the imperial throne. Ordering the maid to bring a luxurious chair for Jian Chen to sit on, he began to treat him as if Jian Chen was a treasured son. This conduct toward Jian Chen had not gone unnoticed by the other princes. Each one began to smile and express their goodwill toward him, as if it was only right that Jian Chen should have been treated like this to begin with. Unable to conceal his glee, the king of the Qinhuang kingdom looked around before clearing his throat. Now that everyone is here, your king would like to order a decree. As of now, I appoint Jian Chen to be the imperial protector. Does anyone object? Chapter 397. Status unable to conceal his glee. The king of the Qinhuang kingdom looked around before clearing his throat. Now that everyone is here, your king would like to order a decree. As of now, I appoint Jian Chen to be the imperial protector. Does anyone object? As the king gave his decree, the entire hall descended into a quiet calm. Each one looked at the king in a mixture of astonishment and disbelief. An imperial protector and imperial advisor were two different ranks. An imperial protector was higher in power and authority than an imperial advisor. An imperial protector could mobilize the army at a whim, and even order the imperial advisors to manage any affair. Another terrifying power that an imperial protector had was the ability to behead an incapable ruler or any incompetent official. This was to say that their power was even above that of the nobility of the kingdom. The king of the Qinhuang kingdom had seen what potential Jian Chen had, so he appointed him to be the imperial protector. The decree of the king not only stunned the audience, but even Qin Ji, who was standing next to him. There was a look of utter shock on his face, and a blankness had entered his mind. Half a moment later, the silence was broken as a white-haired elder came forward with his hands cupped together. Your Majesty, this cannot do. Jian Chen is deserving of a spot as an imperial advisor, but an imperial protector is not appropriate. Prime Minister Kirill speaks correctly. The title of an imperial protector is far too high for a decision to be made this quickly. It would be more proper for Jian Chen to take the title as an imperial advisor for now. Another elder spoke. Your Majesty, The title of an imperial protector cannot be made too rashly. This should be talked with the entire imperial advisors, or perhaps even some of the revered imperial protectors, to see if he is qualified. Another simply dressed person spoke. This man exuded a large amount of air, and was a general that commanded plenty of power himself. Your Majesty! A countless stream of opposition could be heard from the audience. Although Jian Shun was a genius they had never seen before, the title of an imperial protector was truly far too great of a position. Many of the nobles were especially vocal. With Jian Chen's age, they didn't dare let him be an imperial protector. At the same time, there were also a large amount of supporters of the king. At that moment, 20 people suddenly appeared in the palace. The majority of them were elders, but some were middle-aged and 3 were 30-year-old women. These people quietly walked up to the back of the palace, without a word, or anyone noticing them. When the king saw the group of people standing behind the crowd, he revealed a small smile. That's correct. The title of an imperial protector is not something a king could appoint. This power goes to the imperial advisors and 4 imperial protectors themselves. With that, the king stood up from his throne. With that, I would like to invite the imperial advisors to investigate. Does Jian Shen have the ability to be one? I agree to appoint Jian Shen to be an imperial protector. One of the elders spoke out in agreement. Smiling, he cupped his hands together in salute to Jian Shen. I pay my respects to the imperial protector. Your Majesty, with just a few imperial advisors agreeing, it will be hard to convince the crowd. If His Majesty wishes for Jian Shen to be an imperial protector, then all of us imperial advisors need to consent. An elder spoke. Smiling, the king replied, Commander Shu speaks the truth. Now then, imperial advisors, what do you think? We all give our consent to allow Jian Shen to be an imperial protector. An elderly voice called out from the back, causing everyone to turn around. When the crowd saw just who these 20 people were, they all looked at them with shocked eyes and open mouths. Each one of these people held influential positions, and were all imperial advisors in their own rights. At this current moment, all of the imperial advisors were already gathered here. The group of 20 imperial advisors began to walk forward, the entire crowd splitting apart to form a road for them. In a quick moment, they arrived right in front of Jian Shun before everyone cupped their hands. We pay our respects to the imperial protector. At this sight, the king of the Qinhuang kingdom began to laugh without holding back. On the contrary, the crowd continued to look on in shock, as if trying to comprehend what had just happened. One of the imperial advisors spoke out loud. Everyone doesn't need to worry. The appointment of Jian Shun to become an imperial protector was also approved by the 4 imperial protectors as well. The 20 of us just recently made contact with those 4 before we gathered here. If anyone has any suspicions, they can go to any of the imperial protectors for proof. With that, the entire audience began to grow noisy once more. The imperial advisors of the Qinhuang kingdom were all Heaven Saint Masters, so when they saluted Jian Shun, he was knocked in for a loop. At a loss for what to do, Jian Shun didn't know what to think. In no time at all, he had been inducted to become one of the imperial protectors of the Qinhuang kingdom. Your Majesty, this one's experience is still quite lacking. I'm afraid that I may fail to please. Jian Shun bowed to the king. Laughing, the king replied, Nephew Jian Shun, appointing you as the imperial protector is something that the 4 imperial protectors have consented to. With this king cannot make any decision. There was some hesitation on his face. Becoming an imperial protector for the Qinhuang kingdom was no small matter. However, because of how fast this situation had developed, Jian Shun had no time to figure the benefits and detriments, and could not come to a resolution. Seeing the look of hesitation on Jian Shen's face, Qin Ji's own face had a minute amount of worry to it. He and Jian Shen had only a regular relationship for now, but he was absolutely willing to have Jian Shen be an imperial protector, since it would be a tremendously good thing for him. But this expression from Qin Ji had gone unnoticed by Jian Shen since he was currently stuck in a dilemma. Although the title of an imperial protector was indeed high, but he didn't wish to be tied down by it. The entire palace began to grow in noise, as everyone looked toward Jianshun. Xiao Han, on the other hand, had gone as white as paper before shaking all over. The authority of an imperial protector far outstripped the powers of his grandfather. It could even be said his grandfather would be a subordinate to Jianshun. Qin Ji's face grew more and more panicked, as he feared that Jianshun would not accept the title of an imperial protector. In the end, he couldn't hold it in anymore and spoke. Jianshun, being an imperial protector of our Qinhuang kingdom, means that you would be able to use the space gate of our kingdom without any limitations and our resources. Even your authority would be comparable to the king. Upon hearing the ability of being able to use the space gate, Jianshun's heart skipped a beat before he spoke. Your Majesty, if I were to become an imperial protector, would I have to limit my movements? Of course not. Nephew Jianshun, you will not be limited in your travels as our imperial protector. We only wish that in our moment of need, you will come to help us and to not work against us. The king smiled. With that, Jianshun came to a conclusion. This was a deal that was almost all benefit with no detriment. With the Qinhuang kingdom's strength, the chance of it being in danger was practically nil. With that thought in mind, Jianshun no longer hesitated and agreed to be an imperial protector. We pay our respects to the imperial protector. After Jianshun's consent, every single person within the audience began to swoop in to give their respects. The title of an imperial protector was extremely illustrious, and was far more powerful than even the lord, and sometimes even the king of the kingdom. With at least half of the imperial protector's agreement, a noble could be removed from his position, without even the king being able to overturn it or risk a large war. From this, it could be seen that an imperial protector was a powerful entity. Afterward, the nobles and the imperial advisors began to congratulate and pull Jianshun into their good graces. Although Jianshun's young age had caused everyone to belittle him at first, his potential was not ignorable to anyone. His future was something no one would be able to predict, and even the 4 imperial protectors were astounded by him. Jianshun becoming an imperial protector made Qin Ji extremely happy. His smile could illuminate the night and could not be masked. Jianshun's appearance had truly taken the spotlight for the events of today. It was originally a day of celebration for the king's 50th birthday, but instead of the king being the main character, the great winds had been stolen by Jianshun. However, the king wasn't sad in the very least. The smile on his face could not be said to be unhappy at all. For the king to be able to make a great genius become their imperial protector, this was a great honor for the Qinhuang kingdom. In the future, it could be possible that the Qinhuang kingdom would be able to stand alongside the 3 great empires of the Tianyuan continent. Chapter 398. A gorgeous exit. The 50th birthday celebration for the king of the Qinhuang kingdom quickly came to the end. When the nobles and officials had all bade their farewells to Jianshun, he immediately went for his own room. Now that Jianshun was an imperial protector for the Qinhuang kingdom, his status was far different than from when he first came. He had been given a splendid new palace to live in called the Qin Heaven Palace. The Qin Heaven Palace was where only imperial protectors were permitted to live in. Not only was it grand in scale, but even the interior furnishing and arrangements were superior to Qin Ji's flowing cloud palace. Carrying the still sleeping heavenly tiger god, Jianshun followed the palace made to the Qin Heaven Palace. Looking all around at the splendor of the palace, Jianshun was momentarily speechless. The Qin Heaven Palace was so splendid that Jianshun could swear that he had never seen such a grand palace before. Great imperial protector, allow this servant to help you bathe and your other needs. The beautiful maids accompanying Jianshun spoke with expectant faces. The female maids were all carefully selected by the king, and were around the age of 20 as well. Not only were they extremely beautiful, but they were also virgins. Still looking around the resplendent palace, he waved a hand toward the maids behind him. You may leave. Great imperial master, could it be this servant is not suitable for your needs? The maids cried out miserably to Jianshun. Their faces were a mixture of desire and misery. Not only was Jianshun very handsome, but with a glorious title of an imperial protector, It would be a great honor to spend time with him. You can go. I am not used to being served on. If I have something to ask for, I will call for one of you. Jianchen spoke calmly before walking with the tiger cub. Seeing Jianchen disappear, all of the carefully selected beautiful women had disappointed looks on their faces and walked out with sorrow seen clearly on their faces. On the outside of the palace, 500 armored soldiers stood quietly as if they were statues. With solemn expressions on their faces, they looked extremely impressive, as befitting their positions as the guards of an imperial protector. To them, this was the greatest honor they could receive. No other guard would be as well respected as them. Aside from the other guards protecting the other imperial protectors, no other palace guard could compare to them, or even the army. All of these palace guards were great Saint Masters at the very least, with 5 Earth Saint Masters captains, led by a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master. All of this could be said to be Jianchen's personal army that served only the imperial protector, and even the king wouldn't be able to command them. The night quickly passed without incident, and by the next morning, one of the palace captain assembled outside. A report for the imperial protector. The third prince wishes to see you. Once he had made the leap to become an imperial protector, Jianchen's status had suddenly surpassed Qin Ji's own status. Now, if Qin Ji wished to enter the Qin Heaven Palace, he would need to ask for Jianchen's permission. Quickly, Jianchen walked out to greet Qin Ji and personally let him in. Touched by this gesture, Qin Ji followed Jianchen in with some joy. Within the palace, Jianchen had commanded the servants to move away, so the two could have a talk in private. Congratulating Jianchen on his promotion to become an imperial protector, Qin Ji had truly felt happy to see Jianchen's status go up. Talking cordially with Qin Ji, Jianchen felt that despite the sudden winds of change blowing in his favor, his friendship with Qin Ji should remain unaffected. He should treat him as he had before this, since if it were not for Qin Ji, then Jianchen wouldn't have this honor in the first place. Jianchen, now that you are the imperial protector of our Qinhuang kingdom, the space gate is open for you to use at any time. However, I hope that you could stay here for a little longer. Qin Ji smiled. Jianchen shook his head gravely. I'm sorry, but I must hurry on over. Now that I can use the space gate at any time, I must go now. The longer I wait, the more anxious I feel. Jianchen, could you tell me just what matter has gotten you so anxious? Would I be able to help you in any way? Qin Ji asked in concern. Now that Jianchen's status had changed, he was even more prepared to help him. Hesitating for a small moment, Jianchen relented. My homeland is on the verge of a war. I must hurry on over there, or else I'm afraid something terrible may happen. Growing serious, Qin Ji asked about the nature of the war and the finer details of the situation. After listening to everything, his face dropped in seriousness and smiled. A small matter then. With such a small region declaring war, our Qinhuang kingdom will be able to resolve it without question. Jianchen, you can mobilize any of the elite masters in our army. Do you wish to use them? That won't be necessary. My homeland is still quite some distance away even after the space gate. With my speed, it should take 2 or 3 months to arrive. But with an army, the speed would be drastically slower. By the time the army gets there, it would take at least a year. Jianchen replied. Then take some of the imperial advisors at the very least. With your position, you could take all of the imperial advisors without opposition or question. Don't worry. Our Qinhuang kingdom has 4 unbelievably strong imperial protectors to remain here to defend the place without worry. Jianchen hesitated as he listened. He knew that the Jessen kingdom had a dozen heaven saint masters at the most, and the other 4 great kingdoms had at least 23 of them. This difference in strength was far too great. Seeing the look of hesitation on Jianchen's face, Qin Ji knew of the conundrum within his mind. Encouraging him, Qin Ji spoke. Jianchen, don't hesitate and don't forget your power. You have the authority to mobilize such a force. After some consideration, Jianchen had finally consented to Qin Ji's proposal. For the sake of insurance, Jianchen would bring some of the imperial advisors with him. Jianchen, you need not worry about the limits. With your command, You needn't even report this to the king personally. Have the palace guards gather some of the imperial advisors and convene here. Qin Ji spoke since he knew Jian Chen wasn't as knowledgeable about his newfound authority yet. Afterward, Jian Chen had followed Qin Ji's proposal and had the palace guards gather up the imperial advisors. In a flash, 20 varying aged imperial advisors had convened at the Qin Heaven Palace. Although Jian Chen was quite young, his strength had already earned the respect of all the imperial advisors. Despite the position between them and Jian Chen wasn't too far apart, they wished to become friends with Jian Chen. In their hearts, they knew that not only was Jian Chen accepted by the 4 imperial protectors, Jian Chen would sooner or later step into the realm of the Saint Rulers, and even the Saint King realm. By then, they would want to be in his good graces, so this was the time to increase their connections. Once Jian Chen had explained his reason and plan to the 20 imperial advisors, each one of them had readily agreed to go with him. Seeing just how enthusiastic they were in replying, Jian Chen had doubted the space and power between an imperial advisor and imperial protector. In fact, he had begun to question whether or not if it was him being asked for help from the imperial advisors instead. Just then, a refined-looking elder walked forward with his hands cupped in salute. Great imperial protector, this one is Xiao Tian, the grandfather of Xiao Han. I've heard yesterday that my dunce grandchild has offended you. I can only hope that you will forgive my unworthy grandchild. I've already taught him a lesson and locked him in as punishment. This journey with you will serve as a part my atonement for my grandchild. I hope that you will forgive him. Jian Chen looked at Xiao Tian, as if to study him. Xiao Tian was wearing a white robe in a refined manner, and his white hair was tied up around his head. There was a heroic spirit to him, and justice could easily be used to describe his aura. Is this the 5th cycle Heaven Saint Master Qin Ji told me about? Jian Chen thought. Knowing who Xiao Tian was completely different from actually meeting him. After seeing him just once, however, Jian Chen had a feeling that Xiao Tian was an extremely righteous person. This type of open and straightforward person was a clear-cut contrast to his grandchild Xiao Han. After some quick thinking, Jian Chen cupped his hands with a smile. Mr. Xiao Han, you must be joking. The matter with your grandchild, I have already forgotten about. If Mr. Xiao Han wishes to come with me, then I have no objections. Nonetheless, I am grateful for your support. Smiling widely, Xiao Tian spoke. You are too modest. To be able to accompany an imperial protector is a great honor to me. Then after selecting the 4 strongest and most reliable individuals, he began to prepare to leave for the Jessen Kingdom from the Qin Heaven Palace, and soon headed toward the Space Gate with Qin Ji leading the way. Leading the 5 imperial advisors with Xiao Tian as the strongest one there. The other 4 imperial advisors were 2 4th cycles and 2 3rd cycle Heaven Saint Masters. Although they weren't the strongest of the imperial advisors, Jian Chen had faith in them. The Space Gate was in the center of the palace, and with Jian Chen's status, he didn't require notifying anyone before using it. Taking the 5 imperial advisors to it, he handed several Class 5 monster cores, and began to locate the desired destination. Then in a single line they crossed through the Space Gate. Chapter 399. Return of a King in a Single Stride. Jian Chen traveled countless of miles away from the Qinhuang Kingdom. For the 5 imperial advisors, they had traveled into a strange new area. The Space Gate they had traveled from slowly disappeared from view, as Jian Chen took the tiger cub ahead and started to scout the area out. No matter where he turned his head to, he could see no signs of plant life or anything else. The entire place was a barren land. Great Imperial Protector, where is this place? One of the Imperial advisors spoke with a questioning look, as if trying to figure out what place this was. Qing Xiaofan, you should stay behind the Imperial Protector and speak less rubbish. Another Imperial advisor spoke. Forcing out a smile, Qing Xiaofan laughed in embarrassment. I'm just very curious. From the 5 Imperial advisors that followed Jian Chen, there was Xiao Tian, Qing Xiaofan, Dongyi Junbai, Chao Kaqin and Tian Luo. 2 of the elders were Qing Xiaofan and Dongyi Junbai, who were both 4th cycle Heaven Saint Masters. Chao Kachin and Tian Luo were both third-cycle Heaven Saint Masters. But all 5 of these men were already over 100 years old. It was at this moment the tiger cub had suddenly awoke, by opening its bright eyes in curiosity at the strange new place it was in. Taking notice of the cub, Jianchen placed it on the ground. The cub was already decently big, and was already the size of a mature dog. By this point, it wasn't suitable for the tiger to be around Jianchen's chest. On the ground, the tiger cub started to run around merrily, while everyone watched it revolve in a circle. From time to time, it would sniff each one of the 5 imperial advisors. Taking out a map from his space ring, Jianchen scoured over it before looking dejected as he glanced around. I don't have a map of this area, so I have no idea where we are. Let us find a nearby road. Jianchen didn't have the most accurate coordinates of the Jesson Kingdom, so the space gate had only sent them to an approximate area near it. Right now, Jianchen didn't even know if he was in the Jesson Kingdom or not. Qing Xiaofan cupped his hands together. Then please guide us well, Imperial Protector. Well then, let's leave this place. Jianchen waved his hand, causing a large bubble of wind to envelop the tiger cub, and levitated it into the air. MRRR, MRRR. The cub began to growl in discontent as it flew into the air. It was as if it wanted to be held by Jianchen instead. Both of its eyes looked pitifully toward Jianchen as tears began to well up in them. Haha, Imperial Protector, this magical beast of yours is quite intelligent. It has to be a high-leveled magical beast. Qing Xiaofan spoke. Laughing, Jianchen chose not to explain anything, and instead patted the cub's head with his hand. You've grown far too big for me to carry anymore. Allow me to bring you through the air with my wind element instead. Don't worry, I won't let you fall. As if the tiger cub understood Jianchen's words, it continued to shake its head as tears continued to roll down its face, as if wanting to be put down on the ground. In the next moment, its entire body began to shrink at a rapid pace before turning into the size of a tiny cat. It looked adorable. This magical beast can manipulate its body size? How extraordinary! One of the 5 imperial advisors looked beyond surprised at the cub. Even Jianchen had a surprised look on his face, but he knew of the tiger's identity already, and so he quickly calmed down. Shooting a glance at the 5 imperial advisors to his side, he smiled. This white tiger is vastly different from the other ones. Being able to change its body size is its innate ability. That sounds about right. This tiger-like magical beast even has wings on its back. This must be a variant. Some of the magical beast variants have unknown abilities that can allow a good amount of the magical beasts to be able to transform their body. Dong Yijunbai spoke up. He was the oldest out of everyone here, and so his experience wasn't lacking. After that, no one had bothered to investigate the tiger's identity, allowing Jianchen to breathe out a breath in relief. Holding the tiger to his chest, Jianchen began to fly through the air. An hour later, the group of travelers had already flew for a long distance. At this moment, a tiny city suddenly came into view. With his eyes shining brightly, Jianchen hastened his way over there with the group of men behind him shooting along into the city with him. This was a second-class city, so it wasn't too large. The moment Jianchen walked in with the other 5 imperial advisors, the cat-sized tiger kept its head all around as it took in the sights. Walking into the largest store in the city, Jianchen bought the most expansive and detailed map of the surrounding area. In a quick moment, he had located the coordinates of the Jesson Kingdom in comparison to where he was. Right now, there was 15,000 kilometers of distance to travel and 2 kingdoms to go through. Shopkeeper, might I ask, do you know if there is a war or anything happening within the Jesson Kingdom? Jianchen asked. The current state of the Jesson Kingdom is a mystery to me since it's too far away. However, some news did travel here that a war had broken out 3 months ago. I believe there were 4 kingdoms that united against the Jesson Kingdom. That kingdom is finished. The shopkeeper sighed. Paling, Jianchen quickly tossed a purple coin onto the table and walked out with the map. After distinguishing the way, Jianchen flew into the air in the direction of the Jesson Kingdom. Straight away, The 5 other imperial advisors flew into the air in pursuit, leaving the rest of the streets in silent awe at the 6 figures. In half a day, the entire streets exploded with gossip relating to them. Within a second-class city, an Earth Saint Master was already hard to spot, but a single Heaven Saint Master was even more rare. With 6 of them suddenly appearing out of nowhere, it would lead to a huge uproar for everyone. For the rest of the day and night, Jianshan continued to fly without stopping. Finally, on the morning of the second day, they finally arrived at the bordering kingdom of Qiangan Kingdom's stronghold, stopping there in order to obtain some information. He had to make sure of the current state of affairs and make a contingency plan. Chapter 400. Seething anger during the peak hours to eat breakfast, Jianshan had taken the tiger cub and the 5 imperial advisors from the Qinhuang Kingdom into the best restaurant in a city. The 6 men crowded around a table and began to enjoy the best meals the place had to offer. The tiger cub, on the other hand, was voraciously eating a special plate of delicious-smelling barbecued beef. With a content purr, it continued to swallow the pieces of meat one after another, while the rest of the inn gave the table a strange look. Jianshan sat at the table and listened around for the nearby chatter without eating a bite. The Qiangan Kingdom was especially close to the Jessan Kingdom, so Jianshan was able to make discreet inquiries about the current state of the Jessan Kingdom. As for information that was spread by mercenaries, the information they told would be both fast in spreading and reliable in truth. The Jessan Kingdom is done for. The 4 kingdoms combined have well over 2 million people at the moment, while the Jessan Kingdom has only several hundred thousands men. How could they stop that? The Jessan Kingdom has the most fertile territory out of every kingdom nearby, so the other kingdoms have long since been eyeing it like candy. Right now, the Jessan Kingdom is relying on the strongholds to buy them some time, but their army will break down after some time. I heard that the Jessan Kingdom had originally 6 million people, but now they were below 1 million. By now, the kingdom surely must be recruiting soldiers in a frenzy. There's only 200 middle-tier magical crystal cannons supporting them, but their supply of monster cores are already at an all-time low. Even the national treasury is nearly empty, so the major and minor powers of the kingdom are supplying the monster cores. Half a month ago, 10 of the cannons had exploded after being used too frequently. I heard they had blown up one stronghold and caused thousands to die. The difference between the Jessan Kingdom and the 4 allied kingdoms is far too much. Even if they were to convene all the soldiers and employ mercenaries, their fighting power wouldn't exceed 3 million. The 4 allied kingdoms have well over triple that amount if they wanted to. Furthermore, the Jessan Kingdom doesn't have half the amount of experts the other side has. This time, the Jessan Kingdom will fall. I've heard that 2 Heaven Saint Masters from the Jessan Kingdom have already died, and another 3 sustained serious injuries. The 4 allied kingdoms, on the other hand, have a single Heaven Saint Master on the verge of dying. But rumors say a Radiant Saint Master brought him back to full health and healed the others. That means they suffered virtually no damages. After hearing these bits of information, Jianshan grew even more pale in the face. Although things had not yet reached the worst-case scenario, the situation was looking bleak for the entire kingdom, with the difference in military might. You guys won't know this, but 3 days ago, I came back from the Yinyan Kingdom. From there, I heard rumors about a terrifying Heaven Saint Master from the Jessan Kingdom, going against 6 other Heaven Saint Masters by himself and sustaining serious injuries. He used some sort of supernatural Heaven-tier battle skill to kill 2 of the Heaven Saint Masters and heavily injuring another 3. The remaining survivors lost their courage and fled from him. I heard about that too. People say that even among the Jessan Kingdom, he was a Heaven Saint Master that was extremely low-profiled, not being counted in the top 10 experts, and with even fewer people knowing his existence. It is only known that people have started to notice him. I think his name is Chang Wuji. Then, another one of the travel-weary mercenaries spoke out to the previous person that spoke. So what? That Chang Wuji must be an expert at the very pinnacle of his realm. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to employ such a strength. Let me tell you an even more shocking piece of information. From the battle 3 days ago, an Earth Saint Master was able to severely injure one of the Heaven Saint Masters from the Blue Wind Kingdom. Impossible. Just how could an Earth Saint Master be a match for a Heaven Saint Master? I don't believe it. Why don't you go and trick a demon before trying us? The entire inn began to burst into chatter, without anyone believing what the mercenary had said. I wouldn't lie. They say that the Earth Saint Master used some sort of Heaven-tier battle skill and heavily injured the Heaven Saint Master. If not for the intervention of another Heaven Saint Master, the Earth Saint Master would have killed the Heaven Saint Master. TSK, that battlefield was a spectacular sight. When a Heaven-tier battle skill was used, the sky would turn a different color and black clouds would roll in. With the sands and stones flying through the air, it would be difficult to see anything and hear nothing but the Earth Saint Master using his Heaven-tier battle skill. Each time he did, the earth shook, including the Jessin Kingdom's stronghold. At that point, everyone had been scared witless. No wonder I felt something was amiss 3 days ago. But could this really be true? That'd be terrifying. The Jessin Kingdom's stronghold is only 1,000 kilometers away from this place. That's not far away at all. For the tremors caused by a Heaven-tier battle skill to be felt here? That's impossible. The man continued to speak. That's not all. People say that this Earth Saint Master was a wind-attributed Saint Force user with an impeccably fast speed. Even after contending with the Heaven Saint Master for half the day, the 2 Heaven Saint Masters did not manage to chase him down and kill him. That's pretty amazing. Is he even an Earth Saint Master? Several people from the inn began to murmur in surprise at this supposed Earth Saint Master's strength. Hearing this, Jian Chen had a slight smile on his face. He had already guessed that this speed could only belong to the Heaven-tier battle skill wielder Ming Dong, who was also an Earth Saint Master. But the man hadn't finished saying all that he knew on the subject. The fall of 2 Heaven Saint Masters hadn't gone unnoticed by the 4 allied kingdoms. 2 days later, the 4 kingdoms employed 2 million soldiers to the northern stronghold to engage in a day and night battle. The sounds of the war had deafened the ears of everyone, and the blood of the fallen dyed the ground a permanent red with the bodies stacked up on top of a mountain. By that point, the northern stronghold of the Jessin Kingdom could not longer keep up with the battle. Even the reinforced tempered steel gate had been broken down, with both sides nursing heavy losses. I heard a Heaven Saint Master from the Pingyang Kingdom had even captured a high-ranking officer, cutting off both arms and legs. The Pingyang Kingdom then had him strung up on top of the walls of the Pingyang Kingdom's stronghold. How savage! Did the Pingyang Kingdom have some sort of intense grudge with that officer? Even with the advantage they had, did they have to act in such a manner? For both his arms and legs to be severed, that person must be an illustrious general then. The inn started to chatter once more with this new piece of information, with an interested fervor. Smiling, the man shook his head. You guess wrongly. That person was no illustrious general. He was just some nobody called Changyang, who I believe. He was merely just a frontline commander. Seated from not too far away, Jian Chen's entire body froze up as his face suddenly turned pale to a terrifying degree. In an instant, he had disappeared and reappeared right in front of the man who spoke. Both of his hands grabbed onto the clothes of the speaker and lifted him straight out of his stool as Jian Chen thundered. What did you just say? Who was the person that had their limbs amputated and strung up on the walls? Jian Chen's eyes grew extremely red, and a killing intent could be felt from him. Bastard, are you trying to die? The elder exploded in rage as he grabbed at Jian Chen's neck with his own hands. Speak! Jian Chen roared like how a furious lion would. His voice had caused the entire inn to shake as his eyes grew even colder. The spark in his eyes was almost like a sharp sword that could pierce into the man's own eyes, terrifying him so much he couldn't look at Jian Chen directly. At the same time, an extremely formidable amount of killing intent exuded from Jian Chen's body, causing everyone in the inn to feel like they had been dropped into a vat of icy cold water, chilling them down to their very bones. The previously noisy inn had instantly turned quiet. Everyone's eyes turned toward the furious Jian Chun with their bodies trembling in fear. Not a single one of them had dared to move since from the youngster's aura. They could all feel a terrifying amount of power within him. Even the man that Jian Chun had grabbed hold of had been stunned into silence. Without another outburst, his face had turned pale, and his entire body began to tremble fiercely. Jian Chun's entire killing aura had covered the place, but it had affected him the most. With the aura, the man felt himself unable to breathe and slowly suffocating to death. Don't kill me. What did you want to know? I've already said everything. I know. The man stuttered in fear. By now, he had begun to treat Jian Chun as a terrifying death god that caused even his soul to quake. Jian Chun's eyes grew in ferocity as he stared at the man with unconcealed bloodlust, who had his arms and legs amputated before being strung up on the wall. You better not lie to me, or I'll let you die a pauper's death. With his last sentence, Jian Chun's words had already devolved into a primal growl that combined scarily with his bloodshot eyes. I said that person was Changyang. Changyang who? He was captured by a heaven saint master in the Pingyang kingdom. All 4 limbs were cut off, and then strung up on the wall for an entire day. The man stammered. Chapter 401. Advent of the Furious. After confirming things, Jian Chun's face grew extremely dark. The killing intent that was originally within the inn had instantly exploded outward to cover the streets, causing even those on the outside to suddenly find it hard to breathe. It was almost as if the entire temperature nearby had gone down by several degrees and dunked them all within a pool of icy water. This effect on them had been so extreme that it caused even their spirits to shake. The 5 imperial advisors all gave each other a baffled look. They had never seen such a strong amount of killing intent come out from Jian Chun before, and had no idea what to do. Big brother! Jian Chun's eyes grew redder as if blood was starting to gather within it. With a growl, he tossed the man aside, and instantly flew out of the inn with the wind element in the world accelerating his speed away from the place. As he flew into the sky, a cyan-colored glow appeared around his body and shot him straight forward before disappearing from sight completely. Imperial Protector! The 5 Imperial advisors cried out. Each one bolted from their stools with serious face. Seeing Jian Chun's reaction to what the previous person said, each one of them could guess that there was a connection between Jian Chun and the man who had all of his limbs cut off. You 5 go help the Jessin Kingdom fight off the 4 allied kingdoms. Protect everyone from the Changyang clan. Straight away, the 5 men could hear Jian Chun's icy voice call out to them. Jian Chun's announcement caused them to feel speechless. With a helpless look to each other, Xiao Tian spoke out. Let's go to the Jessin Kingdom then. MRRR. Jian Chun's sudden departure had caused the tiger cub to be hurt. Unable to continue eating the barbecued beef on the table, the tiger cub instantly leaped down from the table and sped towards the doors. Both of its eyes began to well up with tears as it cried out desolately. The scene was like a mother abandoning its child, causing everyone watching to have an unbearable feeling of pity. Seeing how pitiful the tiger cub was, the 5 imperial advisors looked on with a disturbed expression. Walking up to it, Xiao Tian wrapped the tiger cub around his chest before looking back to the others. Let us go. After walking out the inn, the 5 imperial advisors flew off into the sky, leaving the rest of the inn speechless. Jian Chun was wrapped up in a layer of wind, causing his body to fly off at a speeding light that was easily seen even in the daytime. Right now, his travel speed had reached an all-time high as he flew toward the Pingyang Kingdom's stronghold. Within Jian Chun's mind, he couldn't help but think back to his eldest brother Changyang who, a brother like that was an absolutely unforgettable person. While Jian Chun had been no help to Changyang who at all back in Kargath Academy, his eldest brother had helped him out whenever possible. This was a tried testament to just how much Changyang who cared about him. Aside from his father and mother and his second sister, Changyang Mingyue, Changyang who was the 4th person to matter to him. Although Jian Chun had left his home to travel for many years, in the end, He was still Jianshen. His personality had undergone no change. And the people he cared about were still those closest to him. Big brother, absolutely nothing can happen to you. I, Jianshen, pledge that I will raise the Pingyang kingdom to the ground if even a single hair is harmed. I'll let the 4 kingdoms be the offerings. Jianshen's eyes radiated with bloodlust and a large amount of killing intent as he flew forward. There were 6 kingdoms surrounding the Jessen kingdom. The Qiangang kingdom, the Pingyang kingdom, and the Jessen kingdom were connected to each other like a triangle. He crossed over the Qiangang kingdom's stronghold and flew another 3,000 kilometers toward the Pingyang kingdom's stronghold. In a distance, the stronghold of the Pingyang kingdom could already be seen by Jianshen. On the 80-meter-tall stronghold walls were a myriad of stone-faced soldiers. There were about 2 million soldiers stationed within the stronghold, and from the skies, the tents stretched across the grounds like a continuous blanket. There were plenty of soldiers that were also patrolling around the stronghold wearing their armor. Another 1 million soldiers had already gathered outside the northern Jessen kingdom stronghold. While that was a huge number ready for a full-on assault, there was still the 2 million soldiers left as a reserve, just in case there was a need. Floating in the air several kilometers away from the Pingyang kingdom, in his eyes, there was grief as his body began to shake and tremble violently. Just 15 kilometers away, a limbless and bloody body could be seen tied to the stronghold walls. His clothes were dyed red with blood, and even his hair had become a greasy red, along with the rope restricting his body. Despite being over a dozen kilometers away, Jianshen's omnipresence ability was enough to allow him see this. Despite all the years that had passed, Changyang still looked the same as when Jianshen had left. The only difference now was that his face was as pale as paper, and his eyes were closed. Whether he was alive or not, Jianshen didn't know. Seeing how desolate Changyang was, Jianshen's eyes began to dilate in fury and bloodlust. His levitating figure began to tremble even more violently, feeling as if he was going to drop down from the skies at any moment. In the past, Jianshen had wished to himself many times over that he could see his family members once more. At that time, it would have given hope and joy. In the past, he had also thought about returning to Kargath Academy and let his elder brother see his strength. He had never imagined that his triumphant return to his homeland and family would be met with a heart-wrenching tragedy that he couldn't bear to accept. Eldest brother! Jianshen howled in grief before his eyes flashed red, and a large amount of killing intent began to billow outward in a single wave of emotions like a cloud. The air around Jianshen turned cyan in color before he instantly flew toward the stronghold walls. The 2 million guards standing watch over at the stronghold had jolted with surprise. All of the soldiers within the tents immediately charged out and stared at the incoming figure of Jianshen. Bang, 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 bang. Several drums could be heard from within the stronghold, signifying that an enemy was invading and that the entire stronghold should prepare itself. On top of the city walls, an armored middle-aged man walked out from a nearby building. Seeing the flying figure of Jianshen, his face blanched for a moment before barking out an order. Release the arrows. At the command, several whizzing sounds could be heard in the air, as several large crossbolts were shot from the stronghold. Jianshen's eyes flashed with a violet light as he began to control the world itself. The crossbolts flying at him several kilometers away began to slow down in speed noticeably. Not too long later, the crossbolts froze up in midair, much to the shock of the soldiers watching. Every single one of the crossbolts began to revolve in suspension before an azure and violet flash of light enveloped them. In the next second, they were sent flying back at the stronghold with a speed even faster than when they were first shot. The soldiers looking on from the walls cried out in shock. Before the commander could bark out another order, the crossbolts pierced into the stronghold walls. Bang, 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 bang. Following the series of explosions, the walls of the stronghold could be seen with several holes and plumes of smoke coming out of it. Several of the more unfortunate soldiers had been struck through the chest with the arrow, and the structural foundation of several buildings had been compromised. By this point, Jianshen had already arrived at Changyang's side. With great sorrow and tears, Jianshan cut apart at the rope holding his brother. It was with great pain that he held Chang Yonghu to his chest. Eldest brother. Seeing how Chang Yonghu was unconscious, Jianshan called out in grief once more. With his eldest brother a cripple in physique, there was no way Jianshan would have been able to accept this. Hurriedly taking out one of the radiant spirit pills he had taken from the cave during his time in the gathering of the mercenaries, he forcefully fed the pill to Chang Yonghu to preserve his life. His eldest brother was still alive, but because of the blood loss, he was barely hanging on by a thread. Taking out a gem from his space ring, the commander of the army immediately crushed it before jumping down the walls. With his strength as an Earth Saint Master, he stood no chance at all against a Heaven Saint Master, so the only chance in preserving his life was to flee. Fire, fire! Shoot him down! Several soldiers began to cry out before shooting the crossbows at Jianshan. One by one, the iron crossbolts began to fire at Jianshan like moths to the flame, and covering the entire sky with iron. But Jianshan's ire had already climbed up to the peak. In this moment, his eyes had flashed a dangerous azure and violet color, before his mind force encompassed the entire area around him. The crossbolts were unable to advance any closer to his body, and froze up in midair. Slowly turning around, they ricocheted back towards the soldiers with the azure and violet light reinforcing its speed. Cries of misery could be heard as soldiers fell to the ground by the mass. With the azure and violet sword chi reinforcing the crossbolts, there was no way for any of the soldiers to defend themselves. Jianshan continued to control the crossbolts with his mind, slaughtering every single one of the soldiers in his sight. In a short moment, several 100,000 soldiers garrisoned in the stronghold had been massacred. Afterward, the azure and violet sword chi that were around the crossbolts began to converge in front of Jianshan, before forming a 10-meter-long sword. Grabbing hold of it, Jianshan instantly swung it at the stronghold. Chapter 402, Chang Wuji Bang. Following the sounds of a huge explosion, the giant sword made of the crossbolt struck against the stronghold walls. Despite the tempered steel that could resist the blasts of a magical crystal cannon, the stronghold walls easily crumpled like tofu at the reinforced sword strike. As soon as the dust had cleared away, a 30-meter diameter hole could be seen. At this sight, the remaining survivors looked at the hole in terror, before everyone began to dash, in every single way possible, in an attempt to evade the falling debris and escape. Jianshan's eyes grew even more ferocious with the azure and violet light in them. Today, I will raise this stronghold. I, Jianshan, will make the Pingyang Kingdom will pay a heavy price. Each word had been pronounced with a powerful boom that was emphasized by his hatred. His killing intent quickly spread around the area and brought the temperature down by several degrees. Bang! Another explosion could be heard as the countless crossbolts rained down onto the ground, destroying it. Another barrage of crossbolts slammed against the stronghold walls, creating yet another 30-diameter hole. Suddenly, a whistling sound could be heard as a strong amount of aura filled the air. In the next moment, 4 figures could be seen flying through the air at breakneck speeds. Regarding the 4 Heaven Saint Masters from the Pingyang Kingdom, Jianshan's eyes began to frost over with killing intent. The crossbolts formed a giant sword with azure and violet sword chi flickering all around the blade, before instantly shooting toward the 4. With a great shout, the 4 Heaven Saint Masters reinforced themselves with Saint Force before colliding with the giant sword. When the 2 sides collided, a loud explosion that rocked the entire area could be heard. A bright explosion of colors could be seen flying everywhere, causing the soldiers right underneath the blast to be sent flying through the air with serious wounds. Many of them even had their inner organs destroyed by the blast, killing them instantly. In a battle between Heaven Saint Masters, even the fallout from each and every strike was capable of killing a person. If even an Earth Saint Master were to get too close, they would find it hard to withstand the shockwaves. The shockwave rippled 300 meters in diameter within the stronghold, burying many soldiers underneath the blast, and even causing serious damage to the walls which began to wobble and shake. A battle between 5 Heaven Saint Masters was far too intense. Even the giant 10-meter-long sword Jian Chun was wielding crumbled apart under the 4 Heaven Saint Masters from the Pingyang Kingdom. In the next second after the shock wave had died down, Jian Chun enveloped Changyang whose body in a bubble, allowing it to float in midair. By now, the 4 Heaven Saint Masters had already drawn within 100 meters of Jian Chun, each one leering dangerously at him. However, when they saw just how young Jian Chun was, they were startled beyond belief. Jian Chun was far too young to be wielding such strength. They had been unwilling to accept that such a youngster was able to attain the realm they had attained. He must have used some medicine to recover his youth, claimed one. The other 3 Heaven Saint Masters firmly believed that this was the case. Another one of the 4 bellowed out, "You there, state your name. Who was the one responsible for cutting off all 4 limbs of my eldest brother?" Jian Chun growled dangerously, ignoring the question. "What, your eldest brother?" The 4 Heaven Saint Masters were startled. The person Jian Chun was holding had his 4 limbs hacked off. Could Changyang who have a Heaven Saint Master-leveled brother? The 4 Heaven Saint Masters were so startled that they thought they had misheard. Who was the one who did it? Jian Chun repeated once more with his killing intent filling the air. Giving a look to each other, the 4 men began to try to figure out Jian Chun's identity. "Sire, who are you? I believe I may have misheard something." Just then, an enormous streak of fire could be seen flying across the sky like a streaking shooting star that was falling in their general direction. Not too long later, the red light came to a stop 500 meters away in the air, revealing an elder with the fire element surrounding his body like a bubble. The elder was rather ordinary looking with his white hair tied up behind his wrinkled and pale face. When the elder glanced around, he immediately took notice of the suspended limbless figure of Changyang who, paling even more, the elder let out a cry of utter grief and sorrow. "Young master!" The 4 Heaven Saint Masters turned to look at the newcomer with an angry sneer. "Humph, Chang Wuji, you really did come. After killing 2 of our Pingyang Kingdom's experts, I shall have you buried right next to them today." Chang Wuji's eyes instantly blazed with a ferocious killing intent as he glared at the 4. "You dare cut off the 4 limbs of the young master? Very well then. Allow this old man to accompany you. Even at the cost of my life, I shall see you all slain." How brassy. Even as injured you are, you can still utter such words. One of the Heaven Saint Masters snorted in disdain. Cupping his hands and bowing behind him he spoke. "Senior Qian Yin, please show yourself." His voice was spoken in such a way that it could be heard from far away. A white-robed elder could soon be seen flying toward the 4 Heaven Saint Masters. The elder had his hair tied up in a crane style, and looked as refined as a scholar. Judging from his aura, Jian Chun felt as if this was a man who had been enlightened. "Qian Yin, I never would have thought you would bring your Qiangang Kingdom into this. Could it be you are also conspiring against the Jessen Kingdom with the other 4 kingdoms?" Chang Wuji's face was like stone now. The situation had grown extremely dire. If the Qiangang Kingdom entered into the equation, then that meant there was 5 kingdoms fighting against the Jessen Kingdom. Chang Wuji had also known that Qian Yin was a part of the imperial line within the Qiangang Kingdom. He had resided within the deepest part of the palace in order to cultivate, and had already lived for nearly 400 years. Despite being a 5th cycle Heaven Saint Masters, he was infinitely close to becoming a 6th cycle Heaven Saint Master, and was also the strongest individual in the Qiangang Kingdom. Qian Yin looked at Chang Wuji for a moment before looking at Jian Chun with a dark look. "Who is he?" The 4 Heaven Saint Masters from the Pingyang Kingdom shook their heads. "We don't know who he is, but he has to be related to the Jessen Kingdom." Qian Yin stared at Jian Chun for a brief moment before turning back to Chang Wuji with a smile. "Brother Wuji, we haven't seen each other in 100 years, but I didn't think that your strength would reach such a degree. The Qiangang Kingdom is not involving itself in this affair. I merely wish for your Heaven Tier battle skill." "You want my Heaven Tier battle skill?" Chang Wuji growled. "Correct, Brother Wuji. If you hand over the battle skill to me, then I will back out of this." Qian Yin laughed. "If you don't lack courage. The 3 forms of the wild python is the legacy imparted to me by my master, yet you still dare to ask." Do you not fear the return of my master and the destruction of your Qiangan kingdom? Chang Wuji spoke dangerously. Qian Yun had a look of fear streak across his face for a moment before smiling. Chang Wuji, you are still thinking of your master who has been lost for dozens of years? You are correct that Patriarch Changyang's strength is truly astounding and has no match. But you've forgotten. He has been lost these many years. With his age already reaching 900 years old, he has surely reached the end of his lifespan. The fact that no information has been heard from him is proof enough that he is dead. My master was a genius even among the heavens and a person without equal. Just what mystery in the world could stop him? When he returns, he will raise your Qiangan kingdom. Sneering, Qian Yun spoke. Chang Wuji, I Qian Yun am not an easily threatened person. I have given my word. If you hand over the heaven-tier battle skill to me, then I will leave. Don't think that just because this old man has been injured, you will not escape unharmed. A surge of energy became to well up from within Chang Wuji. Despite the injured state he was in, his head was still held up high without fear of combat. At that moment, the 5 enemy Heaven Saint Masters were preparing to fight. As they stared at Chang Wuji and Jian Shen, a battle was preparing to break out. Just then a cold voice could be heard. Hand them over to me. Today, I shall raise the Pingyang kingdom and hang the heads of all those here on these walls. It was Jian Shen who had spoken with a calm voice. Although there was killing intent radiating from his body, everyone else was surprised by his words. Raise the Pingyang kingdom, hang the heads of the strong on the walls. The 4 Heaven Saint Masters from the Pingyang kingdom had taken this as a personal insult. Steaming with anger, a flood of killing intent began to direct itself toward Jian Shen. One of the Heaven Saint Masters had barked out. Brat, you cannot distinguish what is the ground and what is the sky. Do you think you are Patriarch Changyang and will destroy the Pingyang kingdom with your mere Heaven Saint Master strength? Even Chang Wuji had a flabbergasted look as he looked at Jian Shen, and the Changyang who with a skeptical look. He had no idea just what connection there was between these two in order for Jian Shen to be willing to risk his own life and brave a fight with these Heaven Saint Masters. Chang Wuji began to inspect the youngster, that was Jian Shen, with suspicion. There was a familiar feeling to him, as if the two had met before. But he had no idea just where he could have possibly met such a youngster before. Despite the feeling, he had no recollection of Jian Shen, since all of the Heaven Saint Masters he had met before were all middle-aged men. Chapter 403. 1 against 5. With that, Jian Shen reinforced the bubble surrounding Changyang, who with another wind element bubble, before sending him to Chang Wuji's side. The fierce blaze of the fire element had already calmed down a bit, as if Chang Wuji was afraid of hurting Changyang who, gently grabbing hold of him, the elder's eyes softened in its gaze. Young master, this is all my fault. Chang Wuji's lips began to tremble as he spoke. After using his heaven-tier battle skill to kill 2 of the Heaven Saint Masters, the Pingyang kingdom had taken revenge on Changyang who, in this current state of Changyang, who, Chang Wuji had been grievously hurt in spirit. Changyang who had grown up under his supervision, and while they had a master and slave relationship, their feelings for each other were closer to being called a family. To see Changyang who as a cripple, Chang Wuji had no idea just how Changyang Ba would take this. Quashing his feelings, Chang Wuji looked to Jian Shen and spoke honestly. I don't know Sire's name, but in the future, our Changyang clan will surely thank Sire for his kindness. Jian Shen spoke no words. While Chang Wuji's words had caused him to feel quite happy, Changyang whose current state had forced him to feel no joy. His feelings had taken such a heavy hit that he couldn't even bring himself to talk anymore. Turning back to look at the 5 Heaven Saint Masters, he moved into a fighting stance. Qiangan Kingdom, do you truly wish to interfere? There is still a chance to back out. But Qian Yun was completely unaffected by Jian Shen's demeanor. This old man merely wishes for the heaven-tier battle skill. If I can grab a hold of it, then it matters not if I interfere. The Jessen Kingdom is already on the verge of collapse either way. Good. Then today I will eliminate your Qiangan Kingdom as well. How arrogant, Just who do you think you are? Not only did you wish to raise the Pingyang kingdom, but my Qiangang kingdom as well." Qian Yun rebuked, as if insulted by these words. Growing silent, Jianchen began to blaze up with an intent to fight. His eyes were already flashing with the azure and violet glow, creating a mystifying spectacle that would shock anyone. Extending his right hand, the fallen debris from the stronghold began to float up before shooting toward the 5 men, with an azure and violet glow. Not even bothering to spare a glance at this attack, each one of the 5 sneered before a wave of Saint Force surged forward and smashed against the flying debris. But the countless pieces of debris sliced through their Saint Force like butter, before continuing onward to the 5 Heaven Saint Masters. Blanching, the 5 immediately grew even more serious. "There is a strange force afoot, be careful," Qian Yun remarked before forming a slender longsword with sword chi blazing from it. Slashing at the fragments aimed at him, he began to gracefully shatter each one to dust. The other Heaven Saint Masters hadn't tarried either. Immediately taking out their saint weapons, they swung them about to protect themselves. But the swarm of debris was far too much for them, and so several pieces had managed to make their way through their defenses and penetrate into their bodies. There was a shocked look on their faces, before throwing out all notions of not taking the fight completely serious. "Use your Saint Force to protect yourself," one of the Heaven Saint Masters cried before a colorful swarm of Saint Force covered his own body. It condensed like a protective shroud around his body. However, the shroud had been unable to completely protect its master from the debris, and had only managed to slow down the speed. Knowing that this could not be allowed to continue for much longer, the 5 combined their attacks and struck out all over the area before charging toward Jianchen. Raising both hands and then forming fists, Jianchen began to levitate the fallen crossbolts on the ground to converge them into one spot. At the same time, several trees began to be forcefully uprooted from the ground and filled the air with wood splinters. In the end, the 2 sources began to combine together in order to form a long sword several hundred meters tall that stabbed into the skies themselves. From far away, it looked as if it was a giant tower that scaled into the heavens while radiating with a bright azure and violet glow. What is this? The 4 Heaven Saint Masters from the Pingyang Kingdom and Qian Yun from the Qiangang Kingdom were stunned. The pieces that were being levitated by Jianchen had suddenly formed a giant sword out of nowhere. A sight like this had caused them to cry out loud by accident. Is this a Heaven Tier battle skill?" asked one Heaven Saint Master seriously. "It can't be. It doesn't have that power a Heaven Tier battle skill would exude. This isn't a battle skill," Qian Yun cried out. In the next moment, the giant floating sword began to condense before forming a 100-meter-long sword. With this decrease in size, the items making up the sword had been compressed against each other in an inexplicably dense manner. Along with the density of the sword, the brightness of the azure and violet sword chi began to increase as well. With a fierce howl, Jianchen brought the giant sword smashing down toward the 5 Heaven Saint Masters in an attempt to kill them. Adopting a grim expression, each one of the Heaven Saint Masters cried out as they began to use their advanced Earth Tier battle skills. Bang! Another explosion could be heard as the energy from the resulting blast threatened to rip apart the skies. The energy continued to cause havoc and destruction as it washed over the air and shook the earth. Several parts of the earth had even crumbled and sunk in from the energy. In the aftermath, all of the surrounding area within a 10-kilometer circumference had been affected. The 5 Heaven Saint Masters began to grow pale as the energy forced their bodies backwards. 2 of the weaker Heaven Saint Masters had already began to spit out blood. Even Jianchen had been forced to fly backward before stabilizing himself. The area around him began to distort from the energy, making it hard for him to differentiate what was happening. It had only been 1,000 meters before Jianchen could stabilize his footing. Catching sight of the 5 men, Jianchen immediately began to congregate all of the surrounding fire element in the world around him, before forming 5 different flame swords. Each one flickered with an intense flame that looked as if it could roast the air. In the following seconds, the temperature around the swords had begun to heat up. Whoosh! Whoosh! Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 5 ear-splitting sounds could be heard as the 5 flame swords streaked toward the 5 Heaven Saint Masters. There was a glint of light in Qian Yun's eyes as he flew into the sky to evade the sword aimed at him. Transforming into a streak of white light, he charged straight at Jian Chen. The 4 other Heaven Saint Masters from the Pingyang Kingdom were looking even weaker than before now, and could not dodge in time. Without any other choice, they instantly utilized their Earth Tier battle skill to strike at the flame swords. The 4 flame swords broke apart upon contact and filled the entire sky with fire. At the same time, because of the sudden expansion, the 4 Heaven Saint Masters were completely submerged within it. After a moment, 4 ragged figures came flying out of the fire. Each one had a layer of Saint Force protecting their bodies in order to prevent any serious wounds. But the 2 weakest Heaven Saint Masters had several parts of their body looking charred with their clothes already burned away. Blast it all, just how is he this strong? With just a simple sword made of fire, we were completely unable to resist the effects of it. He has to be a 5th cycle Heaven Saint Master at the very least. To hell with this, I could clearly see him using the wind element when he was flying. So just how is he able to control the fire element? This brat is far too strong. There's no way he isn't a senior figure that has spent all of his time cultivating. Perhaps he is another ancestor of the Chongyang clan? Even with his strength being this strong as a Heaven Saint Master, we are completely unable to do anything. The 4 Heaven Saint Masters were completely intimidated by Jian Chen's display of might now. With the 4 of them and Qian Yun combined, their attacks hadn't even inconvenienced Jian Chen yet. Accept your death, Qian Yun cried out as he approached Jian Chen from the front and prepared to drive his sword through his eyebrows. With a cold smile, Jian Chen formed a blade of pure azure and violet sword chi in his right hand before stabbing out at Qian Yin before he could strike first. The origin energy of the azure and violet sword chi was far too pure of an entity, so when Qian Yun's sword had made contact with it, there would inevitably be a crack on his sword. Upon taking damage from his saint weapon, Qian Yun took on heavy damage as well. Spitting out some blood from his mouth, he looked at the weapon in his hand in complete shock. Without a delay in his movements, Jian Chen stabbed with the origin energy of the sword spirits once more. With great ease, the Saint Force protective shroud around Qian Yun's body had been pierced straight through before Jian Chen's strike aimed for Qian Yun's head. What energy is this? Qian Yun cried out in terror before jumping backward to avoid it. While the origin energy-formed sword had missed Qian Yun's head and allowed him to escape with his life intact, his entire left arm had been severed by the blade. Spitting out blood, Qian Yun began to drop to the ground looking extremely frail. Stifling a groan of pain, Qian Yun rose 1,000 meters into the air once more and stared at the blade in Jian Chen's hand. Just what is that energy? With its force, my saint weapon had been hit. Staring darkly, Jian Chen began to use his killing intent to glare at Qian Yun before chasing after him. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.